Just asked to enter, so it was
Oh,
perfect.
good. Good. She's coming in. All right. Well, Curtis, I'm going to start. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Dr. Foley, how about roll call this morning?
President Kaler, members of the board, please let the record show that we have 4 members who are able to join us this morning. Vice President Reese is unable to join us today.
Thank you very much. I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is Tiffany in yet?
Her mic is off.
And her camera.
Well, my camera's not off. It's not working. So I'm trying to switch computers.
Just, we're voting on the agenda.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I just can't get my camera to work on this.
Are you an aye or a nay?
Aye.
Aye, okay. Motion carries 4-0. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving up your Saturday mornings for our board training with ASBA. Nikki Whaley will be leading us, and she just gave us a little background while we were waiting for Tiffany to join us. So thank you for that. I want to kind of preface today, first of all, you know, if you need to go get a drink, get a drink. If you have to go to the restroom, go to the restroom. This is very informal. And also, let's just, because this is team building, I'd really like to keep it as informal as possible. I know we do have some doctors in the house, but you can call me Amy today. I would love that, just because I think this is a very important time for us to just be a team building exercise. So be casual, professional but casual, and I welcome you all here this morning. So I'll pass it over to Nikki.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to do today. We are going to cover some roles and responsibilities, and that's really something that you may already know. It's always good to get a reminder, especially as things progress and get more notice. So what I mean is, when we have something like COVID, where a lot of people are paying attention and a lot of people have input and a lot of people are going to try to want to contact you, it's important to remember what your roles and responsibilities are, so that you don't kind of get sucked into getting out of your lane, because that usually causes some issues. So not that that's happening yet. I don't know what that situation is. I also want to preface this with saying that a lot of times people think training comes in, their experience is when you've done something wrong or you've messed up. That is not the case here. We love when people ask for training when they're just trying to do better. They want professional development. And actually, when we go into roles and responsibilities, we're going to be discussing the 8 characteristics of effective boards, and learning together and doing training is one of those characteristics. So you are actually practicing best practices for board service. So I do applaud you all for making the time to do that. So just for the audience, my name is Nikki Whaley, and I work with Arizona School Boards Association. I do training and development, which means that I provide training and support and facilitation to school board members and districts throughout the state of Arizona. I also am a school board member myself in the Phoenix area. And so I bring that perspective, as well as a background in human resources and children and family services. So without further ado, I am going to pull up our first PowerPoint. And of course, I want to echo what Amy had said, that as we move forward, do what you need to do, but I will let you know that we will be taking periodic breaks throughout this, especially as we switch between the 2 topics for today, the other one being team member style. So 1 participant can share at a time. And if people can give me a thumbs up when they see the screen. Awesome. Okay. So as we talked about today, this is a productive space. We're going to be, learning and growing together, going through the responsibilities, 8 characteristics, and then we're also going to be talking about policy governing of school boards and talking a little bit about self-evaluation and continuous improvement. So real quickly, I think it is always good, especially when we're getting to know each other. I'm sure you all know, it seems like you know each other pretty well, but I'm not really sure how well you know each other. So if you could just very quickly unmute, and what I'll do is I'll call names so that we're not all talking over each other. I'll just call them in the order that I have them here. If you could just give your name, how many years you've been on the board, and what brought you to board service, just in a couple sentences, that would be great. So I'm going to start with Jill as the first person that I see.
Hi, I'm Jill Wilson. I've been on the board for 2 years. My why is for the kids. It's always has been. I really want to just make sure that they're getting the proper education. I've been attending board meetings for probably 3 or 4 years before I even became on the board, pretty regularly. Thank you.
Thank you. Amy.
This is my fifth year. My term is up next year. And my why has always been, I am passionate about public education. I think that if public education were to ever go away or is not a priority in our country, it would be devastating for so many families. So I'm just passionate about education, and I love being a part of this community.
Great, thank you. Dawn.
So I'm Dawn Foley, Associate Superintendent. I've not been a board member, but this is my 26th year in education. For me, my passion has always been teaching and learning. That is meaningful teaching and learning, impactful, whether it's in the classroom or at the district level or at the university level. That's my passion.
Great, thank you so much. Tiffany, I know we don't have a video, but I think we have audio.
Yes, I'm hoping to change computers at some point, but I'm Tiffany Schultz, and I've been on the board for about a minute. I think it's been 16 days. So, my why is my passion for public education and supporting students and making sure that, like Amy said, public education continues. I have a strong feelings on that.
Great.
And my children.
Thank you, Tiffany. Shauna.
My name is Shauna. I am the Director of Special Education. I have been in education for 19 years. That's a long time. And this is my 15th year with the district.
Great. Thank you so much. Michael.
Good morning. Michael Fowler, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Support Services. I'm actually in my 9th year here with Higley, which is my 23rd year in Arizona. And if you count my experience north of the border, I actually started teaching and being an administrator in Canada. This is actually my 33rd year. It kind of sounds scary when you say it, but it's my 33rd year as an educator.
So you must be like 43, right?
Yeah, I wish, but no, I really value making a difference for students, and through the different levels that I've been involved, starting as a classroom teacher, as I've moved up the chain in different areas, I enjoy the ability to influence more people. When you're a principal, you're having the ability to have an impact on an entire campus, and now as a district administrator, we're making decisions and able to influence the entire district. It can be very rewarding.
Thank you. Mom.
Good morning. I'm Mom Martins. I'm the Executive Director of Human Resources for Higley. This is the start of my 4th school year in Higley. Prior to that, I came from the Chicagoland area and been in education 17 years, like Dawn, a mix of higher education. So Higley's my first pre-K-12 school district, and always knew I wanted to be, well, it took me a little bit, but in college realized I wanted to be in education to help others, didn't matter what phase.
Great, thank you, Mom. Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Anderson. This is my first year on the board, but I have I'm on my 16th year in education. I had 12 years in Higley through various positions. I've taught, I've worked in human resources. I was governing board secretary for a little bit in the district, and I've taught in a couple of other districts as well. My reason why is because education is just something I've pursued since a child. It's not, you hear it a lot, but it is what I played. I was the only child for a very long time. And so it was teaching my stuffed animals and using my mom's college books, pretending like I knew anything. But I really enjoyed it. Mom just says I'm bossy, and that could be a lot of it. But being that I have such a wide range, all these different jobs that I've had in education is just my pursuit of wanting to be a part of the decision making and giving advice and helping out and contributing to making the organization and education as a whole better. I've just jumped in spaces, been asked to go places, sought out positions, and it truly is just something that, as much as I've tried to push back and say I don't want to do this anymore, because it physically hurts sometimes to be in education, and it hurts the heart and the soul, I just keep coming back. It's where I am, and how I was created to be, and I am overjoyed to be in this position. It's good to be here, and I'm very excited to work with all the ladies on the team and all the gentlemen and ladies in the school district, because I think we have a lot of brilliant minds, and we are going to do really good things, continue to do good things too.
Thank you, Michelle. Sherry.
Hi, I'm Sherry Richards. I'm the Executive Director of Elementary Education. I'm excited to say I'm in my 10th year in Higley. Had the opportunity to work in 3 schools and then at the district level. This is truly an amazing place. I think we can continue to be proud and brag about what we've done and what we will do. And I have colleagues telling me what an amazing district we have here. So I love the opportunity to make a difference for kids, and that's why we went into this, but now we get to support adults as well. So thank you.
Thank you. And then I believe last but not least is David.
Good morning. My name is David Lotzenheiser. I'm the Executive Director of Secondary Schools and Athletics. This is my 7th month in Higley, and I honestly don't remember my life prior to June 15th. It has been a whirlwind, to say the least. This is my 23rd year in education. I started out as a high school math teacher and basketball coach at Gilbert High, then went to Chandler and got into administration, and now I'm here. And I tell people who call, what's going on? Do you like your job? That's what I get a lot. Do you like your job? And I said, it's the best move I've ever made professionally in my career to come and be a part of this team. And so as challenging as it can be, I thoroughly enjoy how I feel like we're coming together and working together to try to set people up for the best chance of success. And so when you ask about my why, I think it's evolved over the years. Originally it was so that I could coach basketball, but now it's about how do I set others up for success. And like Mike said, originally it was for kids. And now we keep the focus on the kids, and we look at adults and say, how can we set our adults up to set kids up for success? And so I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
And I just on that note, I love what you just said. It's still about the kids. How do we support the adults and being more effective in supporting the kids? And I think that's such a great focus, because one of the things that we say in ASBA is the primary responsibility of boards is student achievement. And we say that broadly, but student success, academic, social, emotional. Our job as board members is to make sure our students are succeeding, bottom line. There's lots of other roles and responsibilities, but at the end of the day, all of that is to the ends of student achievement. So just real quickly with norms and expectations, I'm not sure if you all have board norms and expectations in terms of how you engage. But just to recall, and because we had a larger team, I'm not going to take too much time. Usually we can brainstorm around some norms, but I'll just offer that if as much as possible, we can make sure that we're talking from our own perspectives. So I statements, respecting each other's perspectives as their realities. So, we're going to be talking about different things and the way that we're not going to get into anything too deep or too controversial today, but just always a good reminder that as we heard today, everybody's intention, we assume positive intent. So everyone's intent here is to do the best that they can to support Higley and the students of Higley. And so as much as we can, try to understand the perspectives of others and ask respectful questions. And with all of that, we'll just move on and dig right into the roles and responsibilities of the board. And we're going to start with a quiz. How do you like that on a Saturday morning? And we're going to just do a thumbs up, fingers. So you can use your fingers to tell me, how many bosses does the superintendent have? I only see a couple hands. I saw a hand, I see a 1, I see 5. All right, the answer is 1. So the superintendent has one boss, and that is the board collectively. And so this is an important thing to start, because oftentimes board members all approach the superintendent as if they are the boss. And I'm not saying that that's what's happening in Higley. I don't know, but across the state, you know, sometimes if we're not clear on this, and sometimes it's unintentional, you just come and you start asking all these questions, and that's perfectly okay to do. But when it comes to giving directives, and when it comes to evaluating, that's the board as a whole. So each member is, if you want to say, a fifth of a boss. And then nothing can be done without the majority of the board and the will of the majority of the board. So it's really important when you go to give directives to the superintendent that that's coming from one voice and not multiple voices. And if there's disagreement in terms of how to proceed or what kind of direction to give the superintendent, that's where the board agenda comes in. That's where you can take action items and provide guidance in that way. It is a 5-headed boss. So if you can imagine your own work experience, how great would it be to have 5 different bosses telling you how to do your job, possibly 5 different ways? Not fun. And so it's really, really important that the board remember that they have to work as a team, and that directives can only come from the board as a whole. Next quiz question. What is the authority of an individual school board member? Do they have authority on their own? Thumbs up, thumbs down. I'm so glad. None. So as an individual board member, you have no authority. You're at least not any more than any other citizen. So when you are not in a called to order noticed meeting, you have no authority. And that's really surprising to some board members, and some board members know this, but the problem is the community doesn't always know this. And so when a board member comes to a campus, or when a board member is out in the community and a parent or a teacher, somebody comes to them, they assume you do. They assume that you can go and tell the superintendent, or you can go and tell their principal, or you can go and tell their student's teacher what to do. And that's really not the case. So it's important that you be upfront with that and let them know that. And we're not talking about it today, but there is a chain of command and a communication protocol that is in place for this reason, because there is a role and a responsibility, and the board is the last stop. And so you want to make sure that you're not trying to exercise any type of authority or give the illusion that you have any kind of authority that you don't have. The same is the case in terms of access. Sometimes we have board members that think that they can just show up at any campus they want anytime, and that if they want a tour, they can show up and ask for a tour. If you would not let anybody's grandma, auntie, mom come in and just demand a tour of your campus, or a one-on-one meeting with one of your teachers, then don't expect as a board member that you have that. Because without, again, the authority of the board, you are the same as anybody else. So your authority really comes in that vote, and that vote is equal amongst all of you. So when you have a call to order meeting, you have a vote, and that's where your authority comes into play. And that's important to remember too, because we're going to talk about respecting the will of the majority. When you have a vote and it doesn't come out unanimously, a lot of times we can get a little upset about that. And sometimes in some districts that turns out to become name calling or pointing fingers and doing all of that. But what you do when you're doing that is you're not just doing that to one member, you're doing that to the portion of the community that supports that member or thinks like that member. And so that's really also important to remember, that each vote is equal in its weight. And so if it comes out 3-2, that's just the way that it is. You can't say that my vote should mean more than the vote of the people that vote represents. So skipping that, what's the authority of the governing board as a whole? A lot. You all to collectively vote on the policy. So you are creating the rules of the game. So you are going to decide how things should be done in terms of what the general rules are. And the administration is going to come up with how do they comply. And so that's one of the things. You also control a budget. And then, to a certain extent, there's not a whole lot of control because a lot of that stuff is already earmarked, but there are times where you have to make tough decisions and make priorities. You guide the priorities of the district. And so that's a lot of authority. And so in that way, you make a big impact on the system as a whole. And the decisions that you make impact all the students and families in your community. So where do you get your authority? You get this authority from Arizona revised statute. And there's two main statutes. It's 15.341, 15.342 for those that really, love policy and want to dig into it. But basically what we find in here are things that, first of all, the governing boards get their authority through the state, and that's because we believe in local control in Arizona, which means that we believe that communities are best suited to make the decisions for their students and families that is going to provide the best education possible for that population. So that means that we're not going to sit at the Capitol and decide how education should look for everybody in the state, because we may not know what's going on and what the situation is everywhere in the state. So that means that you really are, as the board, making those decisions on behalf of the state. And they tell you in that statute things that you must do and things that you may do. A lot of the things that they say are more things that are permissive, meaning that these are things that you provide oversight over, but you don't have to do. And we'll get into that in just a second. So while there is an oversight function, they do not do day-to-day operations of the district. Their oversight is the big picture. So their oversight is, do we have policies in place? Do we have processes in place? Do we have money for this job? Is this aligned with the way that our mission, vision, values, and our priorities? It is not about, I don't like how you're doing this teaching model, or I don't like how we're not doing, girls softball at this month instead of this month. It's really not getting into the day-to-day operations. So the duties that are not delegable, meaning that you can't give it to somebody else, is approving policy. So I'm not sure, do you all use ASBA model policies? I believe you do. Okay. So it's not even ASBA, right? ASBA provides model policies. These policies are compliance driven, meaning that we give you policies that are going to keep you from getting sued. And we put a little copyright on there and we say, we've looked through this and this should keep you in compliance. These are things that you have to do according to the state. However, they are not your policies until you approve them. So once we send them to you, the board has to approve them. Once the board does that, they are no longer ASBA's policies, they are your policies. They're Higley's policies. So if there's something in there that you don't like, you can say, well, that's ASBA and that's not our policy. If you've approved the policy, you as a board are obligated to follow through with those policies as stated. You are the models for the rest of the community in terms of making sure that you're following the policy. And that's important when we get to roles and responsibilities, because those are outlined in that policy. And when you skirt away from those things or you circumvent some of those practice or policies, you're not setting a good example of a leader and you're basically breaking your own rules. So policy is a big one. You can't just say, oh, well, let's just give them over to Dawn and let her figure them out. And as long as Dawn says they're okay, they're okay. And then, because that's not going to hold up in court. You're not going to be able to go to court and say, well, I mean, they said it was okay. They're going to look to you as the people that approved it. Not to scare you, because I don't know the last time somebody got sent to court because of a policy, but that ultimately rests on you. Passing the budget. Ultimately, the superintendent and the team come up with a budget because they know where the money needs to go and they know what the priorities are. So they are going to present you with a budget, but you have to give that budget the okay. It has to make sense to you that the money is being spent in the way that the community would want the money to be spent. And then finally, hiring, firing, and evaluating the superintendent. That is the only thing that that's the only staff member that you have. So just like I asked you how many bosses does a superintendent have, I will ask you this question: how many employees does the board have? One employee. Their only employee is the superintendent. And that's also important to remember, because even the board admin or the board secretary is not an employee of the board. That is an employee of the district, and their supervisor is someone else. You have one employee, and that's the superintendent. So when you go, and it's really important because we talked about what authority you have. There's a different thing called perceived authority, right? And so when a board member shows up at a district, the principal is going to do what you say, going to try to do what you say. The teachers don't know necessarily that you don't have some kind of authority. So they're going to treat you a little bit differently. And the same is true with some of the associate staff, the director level staff. They're going to probably tell you maybe yes to your face or not a clear no, because you hold some amount of authority. But really all those things should go through the superintendent. No direct asks or requests should be made of any other staff members directly. That your one staff member is the superintendent. All right, so we're going to do a little game, and I'm going to give you, ask you for a thumbs up or a thumbs down. Oversight, meaning this is the role of the board, or overstep, meaning that's not really the role of the board. A board member posts a question on Facebook asking for input on a high school teacher's actions and behavior. She continues to post that her daughter is upset with the way the teacher runs the classroom and wants to know if there's other people having similar concerns. She shows all the comments to the superintendent and wants something to change in that classroom. Thumbs up for oversight, thumbs down for overstep. I'm seeing good. I'm seeing a lot of thumbs down. So yes, that is an overstep. There's a whole other training about etiquette and law, and that we're actually doing something at the Bolts conference on social media. But the key point here is that as a board member, you're not just a parent. First of all, this is probably bad etiquette for a parent to just put that out there. But as a board member, you have a responsibility to, first of all, not overstep your role, which you're trying to kind of guide what's going to happen for a particular teacher. But also legally, that would put you into some hot water, because if there were cause or potential cause to dismiss a staff member or to consequence a staff member, you're already putting this information out there, and they can come out and claim bias or something else. So that's an overstep. Not only is it not your role, but it also, you never want to do anything that's going to potentially put your district into some trouble. Okay. So
Nikki, can I step in for a sec?
Absolutely.
I think that is one of the struggles sometimes as board members. So I'm glad you brought up that this particular, just we have teachers ourselves as moms in the community, and there's always that we have to follow the same chain of command when it comes to any kind of teacher issue or staff member issue. We still have to do the same thing that we would expect a parent to do in our community. And that is sometimes hard as board members. And I just acknowledge that with, my fellow board members, that sometimes that's a difficult road to navigate. And, you just kind of have to do the same thing you would expect any parent to do. So.
Yeah, I mean, I recently had this situation where they're, being home, I can hear everything that's going on in my kids' classrooms. And I had a concern, and I went to the teacher, right? I didn't go to my I'm a board member, and I was also really respectful. So I did not use my district email to kind of provide any kind of context. I used my personal email to reach out to her. I used my first name. I just, sent her what my concern was. She called me back. We dealt with it. It continued to be a problem. So I emailed the principal. And eventually it got resolved. I, again, I haven't even mentioned this to my district. So if they're watching, they're finding out now, but I mean, I didn't even mention it to any of the directors or anything anywhere else, because it had nothing to do with that. It was a parent issue. And the whole thing with going to Facebook, I mean, Facebook is a tool to connect. And if you have a concern, you can see if this is a concern for anybody else, but in your roles, it's just a really, really bad idea.
I think we've been taught at ASBA Law Conference a couple years ago, there was a whole Facebook and Instagram or social media, I can't remember. And there was if you put it on Facebook, you can't delete comments. Is that correct, Nikki? Is that the rule still? Like, you weren't allowed to delete comments of people who didn't agree with you if you had ever mentioned that you were a board member on your Facebook.
I am not a lawyer, but I'm trying to put my Chris Thomas hat on, and that position. So I would refer to your lawyer, but I think the understanding here is about equal access. So if you're serving as a board member and you're trying to and you're providing a space for comment, then you don't want to violate people's free speech by cutting out comments that you don't like. I've heard him have a conversation of that thing, but I would definitely say
that's what I remember as well, something along those lines, that you were not allowed to cut out comments. So just for the new board members who may be on, that they may want to think about that. Like, if they do decide to post anything on Facebook, you can't cut out comments, which sucks. I mean, sometimes people can be really hard. So.
Okay, so we're going to move on. This is for those that are visual learners, this kind of talks about where the delineation is and where the overlap is. So for the governing board team, you're really about the what. What is it that we want? What do we believe in? What's our vision? What are our priorities? What are the policies that we need to get that to happen? Okay, you're that 30,000 foot view. Your administration, teachers, and staff are about strategies, tactics, and techniques. They're going to tell you how to get it done. You tell them what you want, they're going to come up with a plan on how to get it done. You may not like the plan that they come up with to how to get it done, but you have to let it play out. And if you don't like the plan and you don't like how it's playing out, your recourse is through direction of the superintendent. And what does that take? A majority of the board. So if you're free to give feedback to the superintendent if you're seeing something in the side of the house that you don't agree with or that you have question about, but you are not to direct the how. That becomes overstep. That becomes micromanaging. But you can surely give your opinion and your feedback on it. You can only direct it through the superintendent. And your other thing is the evaluation. You're 1 of 5 in the evaluation if you truly feel like that the visions, priorities, and policies that you set forth are not being achieved, are not filling with your intent on the house side. That's your time to let that be known. So that area in the middle is that strategic area of discussion, and vice versa. The administration, teachers, and staff shouldn't be telling you what the vision, priorities, and policies are. They can provide impact or input, but ultimately you are a representative of the community. That means that your best judgment and how you feel about what's going on is what you need to go with, not what people are necessarily telling you. Yes, you might think that they're your constituents, but that's an equity issue. Think about your sphere of influence and who you talk to. If you only get input from 2 teachers and a handful of your friends or people on Facebook, is that equitable to take those 7 voices and say, okay, that's what the priorities of the whole entire district should be? No, it's not. And oftentimes it's human nature. You do with what you experience and the people in your sphere of influence. But as a leader, you have to think for the bigger picture. And that means that the community, the voters have put you all in a position to use your best judgment. And so from this point forward, you have to do your best to represent them. Yes, you listen to them, but you have to also question yourself and say, who am I listening to? What are the voices that are getting access to me? And is that equitable? Because sometimes what needs to happen is to create a process at the district level to gain feedback that the board can agree on, so that there is a process in place to collect that, and that people don't go off on their own. Because a lot of times what happens is if there is no process in place to do that, that's why people go off on their own.
Nikki, I really like this visual, because when you talk about the what and you talk about the how, sometimes that little lovely space in the middle is the why. And effective communication is really important, whether it be through our status reports, through our meetings with informational sessions, but for us to kind of have those conversations is really important. And it's one of the things that our team is working really hard on doing, is the communication aligned to the beliefs, our visions, our policies, and our processes, and explaining the why.
I love that, and I'm gonna talk to Julie and see if we can add the why to underneath that, because that's exactly right. That piece in the middle is where you have a conversation to see, is what they're proposing aligning with what your intent was when you set up these things? Mm-hmm. Because you do want to make sure that is happening. And that's where you give that input as to why are these your beliefs, visions, and priorities, because that's going to give the input in terms of what the administration is going to try. Because I guarantee you, they're not trying to do something that's going to make you mad or trying to do something that's going to get shot down. That's a waste of their time. Mm-hmm. So it's about using that opportunity to have those conversations, setting up regular times to have that conversation, whether it's a study session or being strategic in the way that you calendar your board meetings. Every board meeting should have relevance to progressing the goals of the district. If you're spending time on a lot of fluff or outside, issues that are not really aligned to what you're trying to achieve as a district, making sure that you structure that meeting in a way that always ties back to your strategic plan and your mission, vision, priorities is a way to cut a lot of that out.
Also, a good opportunity here now just to thank our entire cabinet and Dr. Foley for they send out a status report a superintendent's report every Friday, and it has been so comprehensive since Dr. Foley has joined us, and I can just say I have learned so much more of the why, because I can see what's going on throughout the week, so that when those items come to the board, I already have that background. And it's so in depth. So hats off to the cabinet. I know you all spend a lot of time getting the information to Dr. Foley, and it's made a huge difference in the way that I can see things.
Thank you.
Okay. So just in bullet form, for those that like it in words, when we're talking about the board, your role is really to govern. So yes, you're going to be doing the hiring and performance management of the superintendent. With the support of district staff, you're going to help set the direction and the policy. You're going to approve the budget. You're going to monitor progress towards the set goals, and you're accountable to the community. So you are accountable to listening to, and your community includes not just the students, not just the parents, not just the teachers. It includes a variety of that. And so it is important to listen to them. And that's why I say it's so important to create opportunities to have an equitable way in which to receive representative feedback. Because you do need to hear what they have to say, but you want to make sure that you're doing that in a fair way. And then the superintendent's job is to manage. They oversee the day-to-day operations, they implement policies and establish plans to meet the goal, and ultimately they're accountable to you, the board. So another little quiz question, thumbs up, thumbs down. A board member comes to meet with the superintendent. The board member is adamant that the district adopt a new math curriculum. His brother's a math teacher in a nearby district and has told the member about a great material, how great the materials are. The member has lots of information about the textbooks and the materials and would like to share it with the whole board for approval. All right, thumbs down. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of thumbs down. Yeah, that would be an overstep. And the reason for that is the adamant and they wanting to skip right over the process and go to a board approval. First of all, you have a policy of which how curriculum has to go through a process. Curriculum is not cheap. It's a budgetary issue. So again, that will have to ultimately go to the board. But really, what math curriculum you use is a what, right? If the question that you're asking is a what and not is a how and not a what, then you're probably overstepping. And you're telling them how to do math. You're not telling them that you want you would like to have math be a priority. You're not saying that you want math to be updated and fresh. You're saying you have to use this curriculum and this is a how. However, if you happen to have resources, you send them the superintendent's way and you let them share and process that. I know that I send to, because I do a lot of social services and see trainings on equity and social services, I'll share things with my superintendent that they may or may not choose to share with our support services or our social workers. But I let that Dr. Stanton make that decision. I don't just go, hey, social workers, you should all attend this training. Because again, even though I don't have authority, they're going to feel like, oh my gosh, the board member just told me I have to attend this training. And then what they do is they go and they talk to their boss and say, do I have to attend this training? And then it starts to make your staff feel really uneasy when they're put in a situation of trying to tell a board member no. They don't like that. It makes them very uncomfortable. And it starts to build a culture in which people start tiptoeing and feel micromanaged from a board. So another visual in the process, board authority is oversight and management, set expectations and parameters. So you set the goals, you adopt policies. Superintendent provides a recommendation. So they develop the plans, implement the plans, monitor the progress, and then report back out, evaluate results. So they report back out to the board and the board provides input again. The reason why the line in the middle is it, I don't know the right name, it's not perforated. What's the name of that? But anyway, the reason why it's not solid is because there is a give and take between those things. But really that is the process, that is the cycle. Okay, another quiz. Here we go. During a board meeting, several members have questions about expenditures that were in the budget they approved, including the purchase of a new technology for the high school. Board members are curious about how the money was spent and want to make sure that teachers are receiving professional development on the new technology so they know how to utilize the materials in the classroom. Is that an oversight or an overstep? I see some thumbs up. I see some questioning. They're not really sure. That's a thumbs up. So if you spent money on a curriculum as a board, if you pick this new technology, you are being proper stewards of public dollars when you say, hey, we bought this technology. I want to know if the staff was trained on it and that it's being used correctly and that it's being useful. It's perfectly okay to get a report on that. What's not okay is saying, oh, they're only getting 3 hours of PD on this. No, I think every board member or I think every staff member needs to take a quiz and 6 hours of training. And, you know, when you start getting down that path of again, the how you're going to do that, that's not okay. But when you're asking the question of tell me the process, that is perfectly okay. So, superintendent board relationships. School systems suffer when either attempts to overtake the responsibilities of the other. So both ways. When the board tries to get too much into the day-to-day operations and micromanage the superintendent or staff, It causes resentment, it causes confusion. The board members that are staying in their lane start getting frustrated and will start doing in kind. So they sometimes will just decide, either they stay in their resentment or they say, well, shoot, I might as well start doing this too. And both of those things just lead to more problems. Conversely, superintendents that try to limit the influence of the board, try to tell them what they're supposed to do, try to block access to information, all they do is increase the distrust and increase the questions and increase the likelihood that they're going to go around you to get the information from somebody else. So it's really important that you trust each other in the roles that you're doing and you share that information. Involvement with administration and operational functions, again, it distracts from the essential function of planning, policy, and promotion. So you want to make sure that you keep looking at this higher level, because if you're not as a board, then who is, right? You're too busy looking over here in these little pots that are of interest to you, then there's nobody looking at the bigger picture, making sure it's all working together. So the key here is to be informed versus involved. You need to be informed about what's happening. You don't necessarily have to be involved in what's happening. And this takes relationships, right? So we have to foster positive relationships. The first thing, again, is assume positive intent. Even if they want something different than you, I'm pretty sure they don't want it because they want kids to suffer and parents to hate them, right? So even if it makes no sense to you as to why they want that, I'm pretty sure it's not because they want to see the district burn to the ground, right? So assume that they have some kind of positive intent and try to operate from that point of view, and that'll help you to better acknowledge their point of view, even if you disagree. And you can and should disagree. If that very much doesn't feel like the right way, that's fine. But to disregard it completely, again, you're not just disregarding that person, you're disregarding any part of the community that may feel similarly to that. Identify each other's key values and leadership styles. We're going to do that today. So that's going to really help you understand each other's communication. And then build up relationship capital through positive interactions. If you've heard some of the relationship capital, it basically means that everybody is a bank. We're all our own little piggy banks. And we, as we walk through our lives, there are deposits and there are withdrawals. And so if people put coins in, it doesn't hurt as much when they take them out. So I want you to think about, for example, the person that you love most in the world. Think about a significant other, a best friend, a sibling, a mother, father, whatever. Now, if you have that person in your mind, this person you just absolutely love and adore. Now, raise your hand if you've never, ever been mad at them. Okay. I'm not seeing any hands, right? Sometimes the people that you love the most are the ones that can really make you the most angry as well. But the reason why your relationship stays and your relationship is strong is because there's enough good in there that when things like that happen, you have enough capital left to make it through. And oftentimes that leads to even more gains in the long run. However, if you think about somebody that you barely know, a person on the street, and they say something rude and nasty to you, you have no reason to like them. You can write them off. You can not listen to them. You can call them mean and nasty things back because there's no relationship capital there. And so as a team, you have to make sure that you're putting deposits in. If the only interactions you have with your fellow team members is to tell them what to do or tell them how they're wrong, then you have nothing to build common ground on. And so you need to try to put those deposits in, thank them for their service, thank them for their input, the way that you treat them when you disagree, all of those things add to the piggy bank, so that when you do have to disagree or when you do have to have a difficult conversation with them, there's something there to keep the relationship solid enough for you to work forward. So that takes creating opportunities to communicate. A lot of times boards only see each other on that board dais. And that's by design. I mean, we do have to be careful about open meeting law, but remember, open meeting law talks about that you have to be talking about board agenda items or future agenda items. So you can still have a coffee and talk about each other's kids. You can still have study sessions like this where you get to learn about each other's personality. You can still attend events together and trainings together. So there are opportunities. You have to create them though. And it's not going to happen by just saying, okay, we're only going to come to the meeting and that's the only time that we talk. So we're on schedule. We're doing good. Does anybody need a break? Because I know we got on a little bit before 8. We are taking a scheduled break when I get through this, but I just wanted to see. Not seeing anything. So I can only see a few people at a time. So if you want to use your little hand raising icon, I get an alert. Or if you want to use a chat, I get an alert that way. So moving forward with the 8 characteristics of effective boards. So there have been several studies in terms of the impact of school boards on student achievement. You know, a lot of people don't know what school boards do. They don't maybe even know if they exist. And they certainly don't know if those 5, 7, 3 people sitting at the dais have any real impact on what's happening in the classroom. And so there has been an increased research and study into this. The first was the Lighthouse studies that looked at boards and their impact on student achievement. And then there is a study that we really like. It's called, it's by DeVerakis and O'Brien. It's called the 8 Characteristics of Effective School Boards. And what they did is they went and looked at all the various studies of boards and their impact on operations. And they put together their findings. What were the commonalities? What characteristics were boards demonstrating? Were the boards that were seeing a lot of achievement in their district, what were they demonstrating? Because they want to know what was working. And what they found is there are some things that definitely help the district and that there's a correlation between if their boards do this, they saw student achievement and growth. If their boards did opposite of that, they saw decline. And so we're going to go through those things right now. A lot of these things align to, and there's a reason for that, but NSBA has what they call the key works of school board service. And you see there in the middle, student achievement. This is from NSBA, student achievement's in the middle. And then they have these different things that kind of feed into the work of boards. ASBA has our own version of that. It's called the pillars of service. And this is what our self-evaluation tool is centered around. But it's structure, vision, conduct and ethics, accountability, and advocacy. And that's what we say. These are the things that the board really needs to do. This is the work that boards do. So as we go through this, I don't have a whiteboard or anything to go ahead. So I'm going to ask you to take your own notes and just on the side of a notebook, piece of paper, put down the characteristic, like a number, and then if you think that that's a strength of your district currently or an opportunity. So the first one is effective school boards commit to a vision of high expectations for student achievement and quality instruction and define clear goals towards that vision. So that means everybody is on the same page. They believe that all students have the ability to achieve, and they're going to make sure that they have some goals towards that end. And that aligns to ASBA's pillar of vision. So again, you can put characteristic 1, and then you can say, you know, plus or minus, strength or opportunity. Effective school boards have strong shared beliefs and values about what is possible for students and their ability to learn, and of the systems and its ability to teach all students at high levels. This is critical, and it ties along with equity as well. You have to believe that every one of your students can succeed. If you come in thinking, well, you know, half of these people aren't going to make it, or they're so far down that there's nothing that our staff can do to fix them. You know, there's nothing we can do to help. If you already don't believe that, and you have that kind of belief system at leadership level, it's not going to happen going down the chain. And again, this ties to the demonstrating that you really do believe that it's possible is a characteristic of effective boards, and is tied to the pillar of vision. Effective school boards are accountability driven, spending less time on operational issues and more time focused on policies to improve student achievement. So part of what this says is high performing boards focus on establishing a vision, setting policies, and keeping their conversations focused on student achievement. And remember, we talked about achievement doesn't have to just be academics, but achievement in terms of their social emotional, their welfare, their activities, any of those things that you would put in that box of success or achievement. Poor governance was characterized by factors such as micromanaging of the board. So this talks about structure. Do you have the structures in place in order to ensure that your policies are operationalized, and that you have a structure in place to make sure that you are aware of what those practices are? Again, aware of, informed, not necessarily involved. So when we do the self-evaluation, it'll ask things like, we have a effective way of managing our maintenance to ensure quality products. Like, we're not going to ask you to go out there and make sure that all of the buses and air filters are great and go there with your little checkbox and make sure that they are. But we are going to say, are you certain as a board member that you have a process in place that's getting done? And that's what we're talking about, structure. Effective school boards have a collaborative relationship with staff and the community, and establish strong communication structures to inform and engage both internal and external stakeholders in setting and achieving the district's goals, meaning that they're part of the process, not just given marching orders. High achieving districts, school board members could provide specific examples about how they connected with and listened to the community, and school board members received information from many different sources, including superintendent, curriculum director, principals, and teachers. And this ties to our pillar of advocacy. Effective boards are data savvy. They embrace and monitor data even when the information is quote unquote negative, and uses it to drive continuous improvement. High achieving districts identified specific student needs through data, justified decisions based on that data. Board members regularly sought out data and were not shy about discussing it, even if it was negative. And that is a part of accountability, but this is also an essential component of equity in schools, educational equity. It's also just good practice because it really helps with, it's hard to fight with data, right? So if you can make sure that your decisions are data driven, it takes a lot of the assumed bias out of it. Doesn't mean you can't still use data in a biased way. I don't want to get it twisted, but it definitely, if you use that as a guide, it makes it seem less like it's arbitrarily decided. Effective school boards align and sustain resources such as professional development to meet district goals. To this end, successful boards supported extensive professional development programs for administrators and teachers, even during times of fiscal restraint, meaning that you invest in training, not only for yourselves as board members, but throughout your system. And that's part of structure. Number 7, effective school boards lead as a united team with the superintendent, each from their respective roles with strong collaboration and mutual trust. Boards defined an initial vision for the district and sought a superintendent who matched this vision. There has to be trust there. If you have a vision and you find yourself micromanaging, that says that you probably don't trust the administrator to execute on the vision. And so instead of trying to force a person to be something that they're not, you have to start looking on whether or not you have the right person for their job. And if you're the only person on the board that doesn't think that the administrator is doing their job, then that seems like more of a communication issue between you and the superintendent, and kind of leading on the rest of the board to go forward. You should ask yourself, why am I the only one standing? Doesn't mean that you're wrong, but it just means that, like, why do you think that might be the case? And this comes to the pillar of conduct and ethics. Finally, effective school board members take part in team development and training, sometimes with their superintendent, to build shared knowledge, values, and commitments for their improvement and effort. What you're doing today is one of the effective traits of a school board. High achieving districts had formal, deliberate training for new board members. They also often gathered to discuss specific topics. Low achieving districts had board members who said they did not learn together except for when the superintendent or other staff made presentations of data. So again, if that's the only time that you're learning things together is at that dais when there's a presentation, that's not necessarily checking this box. And this has to do with accountability. So we don't have a worksheet, but I would be curious to hear, and we'll just popcorn around with the board members in your perspective. If you can give me one thing that you think you're doing, at least one thing that you think you're doing really well, and then one thing that you'd like to see some improvement in. Doesn't mean that you're necessarily doing it terribly, but just one thing that you think you could be doing a little bit better in.
I think we do a lot of these really well. A lot of the strengths that were listed, I feel like they were strengths. I think number 6, COVID being a restraint has been hard for us with professional development. So I think that one is, I think we've put a lot of restrictions because of professional development, because COVID. So I think we could work on that. And number 3, I jotted down as being something that we could work on. That was just my thought.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Jill, I concur. Those were my 2 where I thought we have, number 1, we have our strategic plan. We're working on equitable or equality above our school districts. Number 2, because our north side was a little bit unequitable. Is that the word? Unequitable? Yeah. Inequitable.
Equitable.
And
go with that.
We're working on that really well. I think number 3 is just difficult, COVID this year, and just operational and making sure that all the safety precautions are put into place on the daily. I think that's just been, difficult. 4, I think we are listening to our committees, really getting our teachers involved in ideas. Again, COVID 50-50, the community is split. So you can't make the entire community happy. 5, data-driven, definitely. 6, support. We're working on our professional development. We've got at least dates on the calendar now for professional development that we didn't have before, especially with our middle schools and high schools. And then, 7, it's awesome strength. And 8, I think we do as much training as we possibly can attend as a board. So.
And I put 6 in the middle, Amy. Is that where you put 6?
I just said there's an
like
opportunity to grow,
yeah,
but
like
it's still
an opportunity. I kind of put it in the middle of my little columns I had.
No, overall,
I feel like we did okay. It's not that we did horrible, but I know we had to restrict a lot this year for like travel for a lot of our counselors that wanted to go to some things, but we weren't feeling like it was the time. And so that's why I put 6 maybe in the middle. And we're working towards it. We know that it's a goal. It's something that we're working towards. Something
we
that's
definitely have.
I'd like to hear from Michelle or Tiffany, because you being a little bit newer on the board, because a lot of times what I found is, especially when I was a new board member not too long ago, less than 3 years, it's there becomes a history. You learn things and then you just assume they were always there, always taught. So just want to get a perspective from newer, where you thought the opportunities and the strengths were.
From a bird's eye view, from sitting in the classroom and observing the board, and as a parent observing the board, so my perspective would look a little bit different. But from listening to Amy and Jill, it was pretty much right on, honestly. And I'm glad Jill mentioned putting stuff in the middle, because I had stuff in the middle. My arrows drawn from opportunities to actually going into strengths. I've seen so much growth and changes, but I had 1, 2, 5, and 8 as strengths, no doubt. 100% strengths, and I had 3 and 4 as they were opportunities at once that have now are geared into the strengths. I think 6 and 7 were things that can definitely be worked on, but they're still more in a strength than something that is in the true opportunity column for me. A lot of good things. Overall doing well, but of course on any of these there's improvement, but that's where I stood out on this one.
And then I'll just ask Tiffany if you have anything to add.
I don't. I mean, one I put in an opportunity. I know that one I put as an opportunity. I think there's just from the outside looking, I think there's some room for growth there. But as far as 4, 7, and 8, and 6, I put as strengths. And then 3 as opportunity.
Great. Well, thank you. Anybody else from the team have any burning insights or anything to add?
No, I appreciate hearing where board members were thinking on this too, because as we were working through these, there were some I had as both. There were examples I had as true strengths and opportunities for growth, and especially when we were talking about number 3, when we look at operational issues at a pandemic where there's a lot of unprecedented things, we spent a lot of time having to look at things that we'd never had to talk about before that were huge decisions that needed to be made. But interestingly enough, those that created an opportunity for us in lots of different ways that I think are positive. So I appreciated hearing perspective here and kind of utilizing this as a reflection tool for us as we grow and go together moving forward.
Mm-hmm. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because COVID has brought a different perspective for board members. And we've had board members feel like, oh man, I really feel like I'm micromanaging, or I really feel like I'm maybe getting into things that I shouldn't. And I think it's really important to just have that conversation, because a lot of the things are under the permissive board thing. Like, for example, staffing. That's not something that you're going to get involved in, but you do oversight and you approve, people being hired. So when we're getting into a situation that's different, and when we're getting into a situation that's high profile, where there's a lot of attention being paid, it is not, and I think, I forgot which presentation we did, I think Chris might have said it, but it's not a bad idea for superintendents to maybe bring some of those operational things to the board, because it gives them a little bit of cover, right? They're representing the community. And so if you're not quite really sure, or this is something new, you may want to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about, but I want you all to give me the guidance. And so I would say that sometimes, yeah, you might get into that operational thing, but I think that should come from a conversation about, hey, this is something the superintendent is either requesting, or, hey, this is something that is really important in our community. And, as voices of the community, I think that we need to be involved in this decision-making process.
Nikki, I totally agree, because when you look at number 4, when we talk about a collaborative relationship with staff and the communications on the structures to inform, when we do informational items on what is our process or why are we doing this, it's informing the why because of the how, and it should be aligned to the what, our goal, our mission, our vision, so that you can kind of see some synergy between that. And I like how it's identified as an effective characteristic here. So I completely agree.
All right, so learn and grow. And I think I'm getting the sense that you are very much a learn and grow type of district, and I love that. So just a quick reminder of where board policies are the law of the land. So they are the rules in which the district operates, including the governing board. B section, B policies are specifically for you all. So if you're newer and you have not looks at it, I would say look at the B policies, because that's going to talk about B for board. My recommendation, let me just really quick, where does the policy come from? District policy is based on various laws, so whether those are federal or state laws. ASBA Policy Services provide these model policies based on compliance with laws, and then districts adopt them. We talked about that. Districts can alter the language of these policies to fit their communities, though you should have changes reviewed by your legal counsel. Have to put that disclaimer in there. And then once a district adopts the policy, it is their policy, regardless of who provided the language. So that is your policy, and that's what you'll be held accountable to. It's important, I'll just put this plug in, for districts to do a policy review, because we have found that and people usually try to do that at least once every 3 years. And the reason for that is what happens is people start doing something and it's been done so long that they don't realize it's not aligned with their policy. And that can get you into some trouble. So you want to make sure that you're doing a policy review as a board. That can be done in a couple different ways. We have people come in with administrative staff and a board member that will sit with our policy team and do that. Our district did it with basically doing a chunk of policies every board meeting for 2 years. It took 2 years to do it, but we would do like, okay, here we're going to do all of B policies, or, you know, maybe K was really big, so we're going to do half of K this month and, you know, at this meeting, half of the next one. And that's the opportunity to make sure that it's aligning. It's also an opportunity to look at the practices that go along with that. Because a lot of times the practices, even though they do not come from the board, they're in there aligned with the policies. And so it's a good time for the administration to make sure that the practice is still what the practice really is, especially when it comes to things with parents and staff, the communication, the complaints process, the evaluation process. You really want to make sure that those things are aligned.
Nikki and Dr. Foley, this is one area where we used to have a board policy committee that was meeting on the regular basis, and we probably need to start that again. That was with our in-house attorney, and then she retired. Mm-hmm. So this is something definitely we need to start up again. I don't think they got through all the policies when they were doing that. And I know Darlene probably knows exactly where we left off, but good reminder. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, and I also want to help this, hopefully this helps you too. When you have a committee of the board, so the board has established a policy committee, any committee of the board has to comply with open meeting law. So when that policy committee meets with the attorney, unless the attorney is specifically giving you legal advice, if they're just there to help you go through the policy, that needs to be open. And you would do meeting minutes and post it just like anything else. So again, talk to your attorney, but you know, most of these are pretty commonplace, and you wouldn't need to necessarily go into an executive session to talk about
And I think, Nikki, how they would do it is they just had one board member present during the policy meeting. So it wasn't an open meeting law, or they didn't have to post it, but then they would bring any of those policy renewals changes to the board for a full vote and discussion. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just letting you know that regardless of whether or not a board member is present, if it is a committee of the board, meaning the board for it, it's an item of the board, and it still is required. And that's something a lot of people don't understand, regardless of whether or not a board member is even there. If it's a committee asked by the board for the board's purposes, then that's fine. It's different than the board saying, hey, you know what, I'd like to get some feedback on what parents think about this new practice that we're doing. And the administration says, okay, yeah, we'll put something together. That's a superintendent's committee, task force, whatever they're doing. But if it's a committee of the board, and I would say policy, because it's the board's thing, would be one of those things. You just want to make sure that in the future that those are treated as such. So in the B policies, you have about your self-evaluation. It says in there that you'll do a self-evaluation annually, board powers and responsibilities, etc. B is also the one area that you can write your own practices. So generally you approve the policy and administration comes up with the practices, but because B is your own governance, B is the board policies, you can create practices around these. So for example, if you want to say, okay, of self-evaluation, and then you want to build a practice of how you're going to do that and what that's going to look like, you could do that. If you wanted to do the board organizational meeting, right now it's just very general. You'll have one by this date. But if you want to put a process in there, and this is the process we're going to use, we're going to have a meeting in December to discuss it openly, and then we'll do the vote in January. Or on January's organizational meeting, we'll follow these steps. Like, you can create a process for those things. So I just wanted to put that out there. This is the one area where you can dig in a little deeper and come to an agreement around a practice. Code of ethics. I don't have the handout with you, but it is in your policy manual, and it basically just says a lot of what we've talked about. And I put it in orange here. Here's a couple of the key points I wanted from the code of ethics that I wanted to point out. Because there's the orange thing is, remember always that my first and greatest concern must be the educational welfare of students attending public schools. At the end of the day, that's what all of that leads to. And the code of ethics is really important. And I'm now sad that I don't have it to pull up for you, but I hope that I could try to pull that up during the break. But that's really an honor system. There's very little recourses for board members who are quote unquote behaving badly. We get calls all the time at ASBA from the community or other board members trying to rat out a board member or a district, and they think that we have some kind of authority to go tell them what to do. We don't. We educate, but we have no authority over boards. And then they always want to say, well, how can I get rid of a board member? You really can't. I mean, unless that board member moves out of the district, commits a felony and is able to run for office, or gets recalled. And recall is a timely and expensive process, which may or may not result in what you want, because all it does is make them go back to the ballot. And if they get voted again, they're right back in. So it's really about creating a process internally that is dedicated to collaboration, that puts protocols in place that are fair, that builds communication between the team. That's really all that we can do. And then when things start to go awry, I love it when they say, okay, look, we've got new people. We want to get everybody on the same page. Or, hey, I'm starting to see that there's some tension around these things. Let's come and think of something before it gets out of hand. I love when that happens, because sometimes we also get called in when it's imploding and nobody likes each other and things are going bad in social media, and that's a tougher place to come back from. Okay, and then just a real quick plug for self-evaluation. School boards do play a significant role in the outcomes. We saw that from the affective characteristics and from the studies that have been done. And we also know that they need some self-evaluation. Accountability is a big part of that. And so self-evaluation is something that that we encourage you to do. We do have a tool. It's an online tool. Every board member and the superintendent takes it, and then it gives you a rating. And then that gives you a place to start and make sure that you're all on the same page in terms of where you think the priorities of the board should be. It's also a tool to help you create board goals. And board goals are different than district goals. A lot of times say, well, we have board goals, we have our strategic plan. Board goals are actually completely different. They are the goals for the board themselves. What are the things that the board needs to work on in order to be a better governance team? And so the evaluation can provide some insights into that. And it covers conduct and ethics, as we talked about, vision, structure. Do you create the conditions district-wide for student success? Accountability. Are you making sure that the district is being held accountable and meeting expectations? And then advocacy. Are you engaging the local community to represent themselves and value the expectations that they hold? And so that talks a little bit about that, but we don't have to go over that. School boards in review play a significant role in the outcomes for students. They also play a significant role, not just directly for students, but I want to highlight here the impact they have on staff, which in turn impacts students. We know that our staff are watching, and even before, when there's maybe just a handful of staff in the audience, they are sharing what they are seeing with their peers. And so that really goes a long way in terms of how much trust there is in the board, and how much they're willing to participate. If you are saying one thing and doing another, the staff have an inclination to just wade that change out and see if it really sticks, right? If you are bickering or can't get on the same page or are trying to micromanage, you might find that you lose staff or that you can't recruit staff. We've been in situations where, in some difficult soup searches at times, because superintendents do their homework and they're like, I don't know if I want to work with that board, you know? So it's important that you realize that the way that you are coming across in your meetings is, Heidi, our communications director, likes to say it's a PR. It's a PR event every time you do it, and it's either going to help or hurt. So you want to make sure that you are putting your best foot forward as much as possible. So that is the end of this section. I'm going to give us all a 5-minute break while I switch slides. If you have any questions, feel free to use the chat to put those in, and I'll answer them when we come back from break.
ready to take it the moment he got it.
So let me share my screen. We're going to give you a little bit of a history and some you know, context for this. So let me, come on, go away. Okay, so this is a booklet. This does not come from ASBA. This is from HRDQ. They do several different kind of assessments and different things for teams. They have lots of different personality assessments for different situations and things like that. So we like this one because it's pretty simplistic. There are 4 team member styles that they talk about. We also like this one because it's specifically about team and teamwork, because sometimes we're a little bit different in our own bubble and our own work than we might be when working with others. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how sometimes we surprise ourselves, because depending on the makeup of our team, we may see different kind of traits come out that we don't normally have in other situations. So we'll talk a little bit about that. We're going to identify our own personal team member styles, and then we're going to learn about how to capitalize on your strengths and improve on your trouble spots. So just like too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, sometimes things that are strengths can also in the wrong situation or with certain other people can leave places for opportunity. Where then after we do that, we're going to identify the team member styles across the team that you all are working on. So we're going to get to know each other's styles. And then we're going to talk about how we can take full advantage of the mix of styles, because we're also going to be talking about roles and what are some good roles that align with a style. If this is a style, this is a good role that you could play on your team. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. We already did this, so I will ask though for this question. And you could just put it in the chat and I'll read out a couple. So it'll be anonymous. If you put it what do you enjoy about working with your team? And what do you find challenging? And when we talk about team, we're going to really ask you to put your focus on this board team. And for those of you that are newer to this team, you might not have as much experience working with the team, but to the best of your ability, try to keep it in that lens. Where you have some trouble, you can refer back to maybe other teams that you've worked on. But what do you enjoy about working with this team, and what do you find challenging? And you can send it to me privately or to everyone, whatever you feel more comfortable with. I'm seeing they enjoy positive focus and professionalism, enjoying the people, collaborative nature of the team. We get to work together. So it seems like people really enjoy that this is a team that wants to work or does work well together. They enjoy getting the different points of view. Enjoy that everybody's working to move the district forward. They enjoy gathering different perspectives, also combining the gifts and talents of people to problem solve. That's good to use the different skills and skill sets of individuals. Any challenges? I haven't really seen any challenges. Some challenge that might be is just issues with your own emotions, navigating issues on the team, when our feelings are involved. Dealing with no-win situations such as COVID, where you're always going to have somebody upset. There's a challenge sometime with responding and not reacting. I know that that's a challenge for me sometimes as well, to take that breath and make sure that you are being in control of your response instead of emotionally or viscerally propelled. Okay, well, that's good. I think that's a good amount of things to talk about, or things to acknowledge. Yeah, there's difficult in team. I've had people say some people just aren't good at team. They really like to do work by themselves. They're kind of an individual type of person, so it's difficult for them to work in teams because they like, they admittedly like to be in control. So it's hard to relinquish some of that. So the benefits about knowing your own style is that it improves your interactions with others. If you understand what makes you tick and what things set you off, you can kind of be aware of those when you're interacting with others. It also helps you to interpret, helps others interpret your behavior. When they understand your personality, they better understand your intent. And so it can help them, again, react to you differently. And then it can influence your success. If you work to your style and the skills that are associated with that style, you're more likely to be successful. We're more challenged when we're forced into situations that's not really comfortable for us. And so sometimes it's okay to say, hey, that's a shortfall for me, and I'm going to lean on somebody else in my team rather than think that I have to do it all. And sometimes it means, stepping out. We had a conversation that there was a longtime board member that's never been board president. And they was just like, I know I don't want to do that. I'm not a good facilitator. I don't want to be, making sure everybody's had a talk. I'm really good at giving my opinion, but I don't know if I'm really good at organizing that. And that was really great for that individual to know that that just wasn't something that they needed to do for a title, because they knew ultimately with the team that just wasn't going to be how they could be most successful. And so we're hoping with this that you get to know a little bit about yourself, and the people that you'll be working with as you move forward. So without further ado, we're going to get into the, let me pull out, I have a copy of it here. So for those at home, we're doing a little workbook here. It's what's my team member style. I'm going to invite you to take out the response form. It's a carbon copy. I know it's been a minute since you've seen something like that. It's a little old school technology, but we're going to do a carbon copy here. And on there, there's questions, a series of questions, and each question has two answers that are possible. So for example, the first question says, I am most engaged when our team is. Option 1, brainstorming creative ways to solve a problem. Option 2, analyzing facts and data to arrive at a decision. What you're going to do is you're going to assign a point value to each of those between 0 and 5. So whatever is most likely like you, you'll want to give more points to. If something is totally not you, then you could say that is a 0 and give all your points to the other selection. You cannot use fractions. So for those middle of the line folks, there's no 2.5. There's no 3 1/4. They have to be whole numbers. And so that's what we're going to do. Take your time, go through the questions. Do not do anything else. Don't separate, don't do any math, because it can get a little confusing when we move forward. So at this point, what I'd like you to do is do the quiz, give the point values, and then if you can just chat me a done when you're done, I can make sure that we move forward when everybody's had a chance. have about half of the team done. Couple more people. Tiffany, I don't know if you can chat or not, so can you let me know if you still need time? Oh, she just put done. Okay, good. So she can chat. I think that might be it. Let me know if you're not done. I just, it's hard to follow the chat, so I think that might be it. Okay. So now we're going to go to the next step. We're going to do a little bit of math here. Okay. So you're going to separate your pages, and then underneath you'll have a yellow one. And that's important because it has some shapes associated with it. So when you lift it up, you'll see that the number that you wrote is now inside of a shape. Okay. Now this seems very elementary. You know your shapes and you know your numbers through 4. I cannot tell you how many times I've done this and people cannot get the numbers to add up right. And it's the eyes trick you with the whole triangle, square, rectangle thing, and sometimes you miscalculate. So I want you to very carefully chart the totals of each shape. And so this might help you a little bit. First, do all the diamonds. So go through and write down all the diamond numbers. Then do all of the square numbers. Then do all the triangle and the oval. And there's a little bit of a cheat sheet here on the screen because it'll say, okay, number 1 has at least 1 diamond question in it.
The total should be 90, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Just making sure I can add.
Yes. And then I'm going to do the same thing. Just when you're done, chat me a done. Whoops. Okay, we're about halfway there. Okay, I think maybe just 2 more. No, wait, I think we're good. I apologize if we're not. Please do tell me. Oh, yep, oh, there was one less. Please do tell me if we need another minute. Okay. So yes, hopefully you got a total number at 90. And now you're going to look in your workbook. So there on page 3, chart 1, you're going to go ahead and put the total number in the triangle, diamond, oval, and square or rectangle. That's there on page 3. Okay, so as you can see here, these are on an axis. So we have ones that are high assertive, low assertive. Sometimes people have a negative connotation with assertive, but it just means it's somebody that is vocal, somebody that is finds it easier to communicate or to share their feelings. Low assertive is somebody that does a lot more thinking and maybe not as vocal, or doesn't always say what's on their mind. They're kind of more in their head. And then we have, and so you see there tells versus asks. So you can see that they'll tell you how it is, and then they might ask and couch kind of their question or their thinking in a question. And then we have high expressive or low expressive. Again, displays emotion that you can very much tell, how they're feeling, and then controls emotion. You can't always tell what's going on in terms of what they may be thinking about something. So in sum, our direct folks are assertive and they're forward thinking about the future. Our spirited folks are energetic and creative. Considerates tend to be thoughtful and supportive, and systematics tend to be consistent and well organized. So digging into each one of these styles a little bit more, and I'm not asking anybody to say what their style is just yet. I would like, what I will do though, is at the end of each one of these, I will ask, you don't have to worry about writing them down, because we're going to have a discussion about it later, and we're going to be talking about the team ones as well. So our direct style people, their strengths are that they are good at focusing on the big picture. So maybe they're going to be less likely to want to get into the weeds or micromanage, because they like to focus on the big picture. And I apologize, my dogs are barking. And I don't mean my feet. Believes that conflict can be constructive. So these are people that you might think you're fighting. Somebody might think that they're fighting, but they just think that they're having constructive conversation, right? They believe that conflict can be constructive. They are more likely to take risks, and they communicate assertively. Like, so there's no, questioning what it is that they think or want in terms of what they think that you should do going forward. For our spirited style folks, their strengths include a love of generating new ideas. They're open to change, so they're pretty flexible. They recognize and praise the accomplishments of others. So they're going to be like the cheerleader of the team in terms of, yeah, look at what we did. And they have a lot of energy and enthusiasm. They bring the energy. Our considerate styles tend to be more active listeners, so they really listen to other people. They are always willing to lend a hand when needed. They encourage others to share their ideas and feelings, so they're more about making sure everybody else feels like they're being heard. And they tend to mediate conflict within a team. They're the peacemakers of the group. Our systematic style strengths include thinking critically and analytically, so really digging into the data and trying to find the connections. They have strong organizational skills, high standards of performance, so they're really dependable, and they tend to pay attention to the details. Okay. Now let's talk about our trouble spots. Direct styles can tend to be overly critical. They may give feedback with little regards of the receiver's feelings. Again, they're just getting to the point and not really thinking about how that lands. And that can come off as aggressive or impatient. So they are somebody that doesn't want to do a lot of talking. They want to kind of talk a little bit and get it done. So that could be impatient. Spirited styles, trouble spots. So sometimes they can be distracted or undisciplined, meaning they lose focus, or they can't, they might not finish a task, which keeps them from maybe struggling to meet deadlines. Sometimes their behavior can be disruptive, meaning they may interrupt or bring up something that doesn't have to do with the current topic. And so that can be disruptive to the conversation. And sometimes they have difficulty sticking to the plan. So if you create a plan and everybody's on the same page, because they get distracted and they're one of those people that like to generate ideas, they may start working on another plan or think of a different way. And so that can have difficulty sticking to the plan. Considerate styles, they don't express their opinions. So they're kind of just go with what everybody else says, and it's hard to know what they think, and they don't express their opinions. So that might lead to some resentment. Passive independent, so they kind of just go with whoever they think probably they're going to make the least mad. They want to go with that option. Trust too easily, and also overly sensitive. So maybe somebody that's not great at taking feedback or construction or that deals with disagreement very well. Our systematic trouble spots. They can be perfectionists, meaning they don't want to move anything forward until it's completely perfect, which makes them resistant to change because they like the way it works. It's not broken, let's not fix it. Values data over personal relationships. So sometimes they really want to focus on that quantitative data, the numbers, and less about what that means or the context. They just want to get, values data over personal relationship. And then they can sometimes be rigid and inflexible, meaning they thought about it so much, they're pretty sure this is the right way, and that's can't be convinced otherwise because they thought about it and they know that this is the right way. So that you can see how all of those challenges of the different personalities can be difficult in a team, right? So now let's talk a little bit about styles and roles. And this is all for your own thinking, because we're going to do a little bit of reflection here at the end. So our styles are preferred behavior, meaning that if left to your own devices, that's what you naturally gravitate to, right? So we just talked about our styles. Roles are assigned responsibilities. And so certain team member styles are favored for certain roles. So if your natural inclination is this, then these responsibilities are going to be a natural fit for you. And this is good to cover because we need all of these roles on a team. When you work on a team, there's lots of different things that need to happen. And so different roles need to be played. This is going to help give us some insight into looking at what your natural personality is and what responsibilities on this team you may be best suited for. It's also going to give us, when we go to talk a little bit about each other's styles, it's going to give us some ideas of where our strengths and where our gaps are in this team, meaning that if we have a whole lot of one style and they all want to do that role, somebody's going to have to step up and do the other roles, or they don't get done and you have an imbalanced team. Okay. So task roles. There are task roles, which are initiator, they get the discussion started and they address difficult issues. Coordinator, they organize people and projects. Evaluator, they're going to ask the questions and measure progress. And the completer, they follow through on the details. So just real quick, you can kind of take a guess at which personality styles might go with that. So initiator is most likely going to be what? Anybody want to take a guess?
Direct. Someone who's direct.
Yes. So your direct people are going to be like, all right, let's get this started. And then coordinator organizes people and projects.
Systemic.
Yes, systemic. Spirited, asks questions and measures the progress. And then completer is that considerate person that focuses on the details. So in addition to your task roles, you have your maintenance roles. So once you decide what needs to get done, then how do you keep things going? The gatekeeper, they get people involved. They make sure that everybody on the team feels like they're part of the team. You have the harmonizer, who mediates between conflicting parties. The energizer keeps spirits and motivation high. And the encourager, who is the person that recognizes and praises good performance. So if you look on page 9 of the workbook, you can see a summation of what's going on there. And you see that under direct, you have the communication. And I'm just going to read a few of these because I know that they're not in the book and for the audience. So under communication, under direct, a direct person freely shares opinions and is candid. They get to the point quickly and concisely, and they ask tough questions and raise difficult issues. Their work preference is that they're most comfortable in setting individual and team objectives. They like to work independently, and they move from one task to another with speed and confidence. And they are best suited to the roles of initiator and evaluator. Our spirited folks enjoy socializing before taking care of business. They are energetic and enthusiastic, and they are persuasive and engaging, meaning they're people. They excel at the creative process. They're good at multitasking, and they prefer to solve problems through group discussion. They are good at the energizer and encourager roles. Our considerate folks enjoy listening to others, building trust. They use supportive body language, eye contact, head nodding in their communication style. And their work preference is that they prefer flexible and collaborative work environments, and they're comfortable taking responsibility for the less high profile tasks. So they are comfortable doing the details or the things that don't seem as quote unquote fun to the other folks. And they're the gatekeeper and the harmonizer type roles. And then in systematic, their communication style is conversations are precise and to the point. They take care of business before socializing. They prefer to discuss facts over feelings. In their work preferences, they are well organized, they successfully meet deadlines, and they work consistently and accurately, but prefer to focus one task at a time. So they don't like to do the multitasking. And they are in the roles that are good, well suited for them are coordinator and completer. So now I'm going to invite you all to take, I'm going to give you about 5 to 10 minutes. I'll kind of check in with you, but this is, there's several questions on pages 10 and 11 of the workbook where you're asked to reflect on your own style. And remember, you can go back to the other pages to look again at the roles, and then the strengths and trouble spots are on page 6 and 7. And so we want you to take some time, or I want you to take some time to reflect and answer these questions. What is your personal strength as a member of the team? What is the greatest challenge you may face as a member of this team? What can you improve to, what can you do to improve your team member performance? What are some of the roles that you think you might be able to take responsibility for in the future, or that might be a good match? And think about one other person on your team and how you can apply what you've learned just so far that might help you improve your relationship with them. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to do this.
these are kind of difficult when we haven't even had a first meeting of January yet to know the 2 new board members. You're muted, Nikki.
Jill, I agree. I'm struggling with number 3 quite a bit.
I'm like, I
have no idea. I'm just trying to be general, I think.
I know. I'm like, number 5 is pretty rough. I know a lot of us. I guess I could, because we're supposed to do it within the board, right? Or can we go to
the board and the administrator? This is the
We
team
can do
that is brought here today.
Okay, we can do administrator.
Yeah, I went admin, Jill.
Okay. Yeah, because I'm like, I could do Amy, but that's really the only person who's on here. So I felt like I was picking and choosing.
You don't have to get into it.
Number 5.
Yeah, if you're not really there yet, that's something that you can reflect on.
Okay.
Always come back to this workbook, and in fact, we often tell people, you know, because we've done this where people do this brand new and everybody's still in kumbaya, right? And some people stay in kumbaya and other people don't. So when they start to not, we always tell them they can come back to here. If you start having, like you're not seeing eye to eye with somebody on your team, you can always come back to this and look at, you know, some ways that you can change your behavior, but you can also, when we get to the team section, remind yourself of what their preferences are and think about a new way to approach. So you may not be in a spot right now for that, and that's okay. Just to give you some thoughts in terms of in what ways can you improve your team member performance. This might be where you talk a little bit about, you know, your trouble spots and some things that you think you might want to be aware of, just in general, when you're working in a group. But I was going to give you just another minute. That would have been 10 minutes. So let me just give you a minute or 2 more to finish up, and then we're going to have some conversation. Okay, 30 more seconds. In the meantime, who wants to take a stab at what mine are? I actually have 2 pretty close ones. So who would like to guess what are my style?
Are you spirited?
I am spirited. That is one of them.
I would assume systematic.
I will tell you that I'm the opposite of the 2 that Julie is. So both our teams are perfectly balanced. She has 2 and I have 2.
Are you systematic?
No, that is a close one for me, but no, that's not mine. That's one of Julie's.
Well, it's 50-50 at this point, so I'll go with considerate.
Oh, I appreciate you. That's my lowest one. That's Julie. I am spirited and direct. So you can imagine how high energy and intense I can be at times. But yes, I'm spirited and direct. And Julie is considerate and systematic. And so I always say she's the yin to my yang, because between the 2 of us, it's a really good work marriage in terms of making sure all of the boxes are checked. Lots of idea generating, lots of checking in on her part, you know, because sometimes I just go. When I create something that I just do big picture kind of stuff, she's really good at coming back in and filling in the process part with her systematic. And So I really enjoy the work team, and that's how a good team should be. You really should have all of these personalities. Could you imagine if you just had, 5 direct people, 5 direct systematic people at that, where everybody not only was very assertive in their thinking, but very certain that they were correct? That would be a very difficult team to work on. And believe it or not, I have worked with teams that have predominantly one of the characteristics, either a lot of direct or a lot of considerate. You can imagine on a considerate board, there's not a lot that gets done. Everybody's so worried about making a decision that hurts somebody, or they so much want to hear all the input from everyone that sometimes it's hard to get decisions made. So it really, like I said in the beginning, all of a good thing, or too much of a good thing can be difficult for a team. All of these are really needed. So with that, what we're going to do, and I'm going to do the same thing. I hope that people are comfortable enough with me popcorning around. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through everybody on here, and that's the team included, because you made the decision to not just say the board and the superintendent, but to include the administrators that you all work with. I'm going to set a timer, because if you're a spirited person like me, you may want to talk for 5 minutes. So I'm going to put a timer. Everybody's going to get 2 minutes. There's 10 of you, so that'll take us about 20 minutes to get through. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I would like you to tell us your top style. If you're close, like if you have a top 2, like you're tied, you got 20 something in both of them, or you got like 23 and 22. If you feel like it's really close, you can go ahead and share both of those, but we don't need to know all of them. You can tell us your first, second, third, and fourth, so that, just if you want to, but you have 2 minutes to share with us what you'd like, using the questions that you answered as a guide. So you don't have to answer all 5 questions in that 2 minutes, but if you want to talk a little bit about, first of all, of course, what your strengths are, and then how you think that would help the team. And what you're recognizing are going to be some of the things you're going to need to work on as a team member. Those are the 2 that I think I would focus on instead of the jobs and future projects. We'll talk about that a little later. But I'd like you to really focus more on what are your strengths, and what you think that you bring to the team, and then some things that you're kind of going, yeah, maybe I need to make sure I watch that going forward. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, if you can't hear my timer, sometimes that happens, I will just kind of wave it like this. So I am going to start at the bottom of my screen. I'm going to go to mom.
So I am considerate, and then I'm really close to systematic and direct. So I know in terms of strengths, when working with groups, I listen, I have high standards of performance at times, and depending on the subject and the information, I can get into the details, and I'm always open to listening and change. Some of my challenges is that sometimes I'm too trusting of others, or the situation, or a lot of times it's I trust until you break the trust, and sometimes can be impatient with certain things depending on the topic or the area in which we're discussing. So I do think it's important that I make sure if a voice isn't heard, depending on the meeting and the type of meeting, that we make sure that voices are heard from everybody so we can get the perspective. And I think sometimes I can help other people understand or see the big picture depending on the dynamic of the group, and if we're having conflict or if we're not agreeing on certain topics.
Mom, did you say you were considerate and what?
I was considerate, and then I was very close with direct and systematic. They were just 2 points from one another, or 3 points. So considerate, and then systematic and direct, 30, 23, and 20.
Okay, so 30 was a strong one.
Yes.
Considerate is your primary, so that's what we'll mark. And if you see on page, as we're going along, on the next page, there's your team's style profile on page 12. And on there, you see the triangle, diamond, oval, and rectangle for the different styles. go ahead and just put initials or draw a line and put a name so that you know who's in which one. It's not a lot of space, so I would say try to focus mostly on their primary one, unless their primary one was close. Like, so for example, if mom had one that was 29 and 28, I would say those are both her primary ones. Okay, thank you, Mom. Let's go to David.
So my top two were very close. I was a 27 for spirited and a 26 for considerate. And so when I look at that, I think my strengths and what I add to the team, I think I'm good at building collaboration within the team and being kind of an energizer and an encourager and a harmonizer. I think those are the pieces that I add to the team. I do like to listen and hear from everyone on there, and then be able to get their points of view and look at their perspective as we go forward in making a decision. I think definitely one of my greatest challenges is staying focused and staying in my lane. I think sometimes I have a tendency, or I feel it, to maybe step outside of my role a little bit. And then, as I'm sure Dr. Foley would agree, she might have to remind me to stay on task and stay going. And I feel like I'm dug from up every now and then, and I see squirrel and I just start going that way. But from a big picture as well, my absolute worst was systematic. And, you know, when you talk about deadlines and meeting things, and that's why I think it's really important that we have good support for myself, for sure, staying on top and staying in those deadlines. And I appreciate Virginia so much strong-arming me to make sure I can get my things done and turned into Dr. Foley on time so we can get to you.
Spirited definitely fits with coach, right? So that's a good spot for you. And considerate, Mom, is a perfect role for HR because you really have to listen to other people and make sure they feel comfortable. So at least you know you can feel good about the life choices that you've made. I'm going to mix it up and I'm going to go out of order. Hopefully this doesn't result in me forgetting someone. But we have a lot of staff. I want to do a board member here real quick. Let's do Amy. You're on mute. Amy, you're on mute.
Oops. Okay, so I'm considerate, and then I was also, like Mom, direct and systematic were close second. I believe I'm a good listener. I try to lend a helping hand whenever possible. I try to encourage those around me. I'm able to disagree with others with kindness, but some of my challenges are then I am sensitive and I take criticism very personally. I want to make everybody happy and I can't. And easier for me sometimes to stay very quiet during board meetings because I know every word I say will get twisted in the public view or misconstrued. So I'm very, very careful when I speak in board meetings. And I think sometimes people expect me to say more because I'm supposedly the president, but I just have seen things go south for many school board members. And another challenge I face is I hear a lot all the time. I'm very into social media. I have kids in the district, and so I do hear a lot of grumblings. And I, again, take all that to heart. In ways I can improve, I need to keep a more bird's eye view and not listening to the only loudest voices in the community.
Thank you. You guys don't even need this timer. Okay. Let's go with Dawn.
Okay, so mine was really interesting because I am like so close on 3 of them. I was a 26 on considerate, but I was tied with 24s on systematic and direct. So I think when I'm reflecting on that, I think that maybe my strength is being a harmonizer, because I try to kind of conduct, but I'm very comfortable going between wanting to listen, but then jumping into being real direct, systemic, and explicit with so what, now what, and how do we move forward. So I think I'm kind of, it's interesting that my numbers are so close. Is that unusual?
No, and it's actually not unusual for things to be almost, I don't know if it's possible for them to be exact because of the number, but yeah, it's people can get almost exact numbers, close numbers in all four and be kind of in the middle. And the interesting thing about that, Dawn, is that, and we'll talk about it a little bit more on the team, is as we get through all of this, when you have something that's close, like a close one like that, you have your natural, and then you have what's natural with you given a situation. So if something is missing, so if you're on for example, I consider it as my least one in terms of taking time, making sure everybody's heard, making sure people feel good and all that stuff. I'm like a go, go, go. But if I'm on a team with a bunch of other go, 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 I can kick that one into gear, because when it's missing, I notice it. And so I will kick that into gear. So that might make sense to you in terms of, so far what we've seen is a lot of considerate. And so you come across more direct in that, because you work with so many considerate people.
So I think that when I look at challenges, I think one of the hard parts is that obviously we're so new, things have been so different. We've had such crisis management situations that are beyond our control, and so I think it's interesting that we've had to rely on different parts of our strengths to kind of come together to figure out what are we going to do, what's best for Higley, and how are we going to do that with what we know and are able to control. I think the idea of in a way, I was thinking, when I was looking at the team roles being so close, I think being a harmonizer and a gatekeeper to help coordinate and complete is probably a good thing with the strengths and talents of the team we have, with the work that we have to do together as a new team would be a positive. I think too is a challenge. I too am someone, I think probably the considerate part is true, because I take it to heart. It will keep me up at night. I will work on it until we have a solution. So that was my reflection on kind of this. This was interesting, and I love hearing what everyone else is.
Oh, perfect timing. Your timing just went off. Okay. Whoop, stop. I got you. Okay. Thank you, Dawn, for sharing. Let's go to Sherry.
So you're going to hear that David and I balance each other out pretty well, because I'm the systematic direct person. They were 29 systematic and direct was 26, and the other ones were completely different. So I think I'm good at thinking critically and analytically. Organization is a strength. I have high standards and expectations. I pay attention to details. I don't mind conflict and risk. I try to focus on the big picture, and sometimes I'm assertive, maybe too assertive. Those weaknesses include being impatient, highly critical of myself and sometimes others, being a perfectionist, and trying to focus on data instead of people. And that's an embarrassing one to say sometimes, because I love people, but I get distracted by data sometimes. I really need to work on listening more intently and lightening up, should I say, but that's why Mr. Jokester is 2 offices down. So that's mine.
Thank you. I really appreciate those that have gone so far being really honest. And that's what this is about. It's just, it's not bad or worse. It's just acknowledging where you're at and where that is helpful and where that sometimes can get away from you. So thank you so much for sharing.
And Nikki, is
yeah.
it like, are we going to share what we think of others later? Because like what Sherry just said, I don't picture her being, she's so kind and so compassionate. So I see that in her that she didn't even mention. I don't know. I think that's interesting.
Not necessarily. We are going to talk about the team. And at that point, we might say like, hey, because sometimes we don't always are like, hey, I would be good at this role, you know, or if we do think that, we might not say it. So when we get to the team one, and we can start like saying, hey, you know, this would be a good role for you because we see this characteristic in you. You can certainly use this to have a conversation. That's the sad thing about not being in a room, is usually in a room when you don't have Zoom that cuts you off if you try to talk over each other. People will be laughing or going, oh yeah, I totally see that, or I don't know what you're talking about, I've never seen that. And so yeah, it's a little bit unfortunate. We're not going to specifically go around the room and say what you think of each other or what you have seen, but you can definitely have a conversation later like, yeah, I really see that direct, like that makes sense, I see that now. And we will have a chance to say some ahas, because as people go through their styles, you might be like, oh, okay, that's why they're like, you know, that's why they're like that. I'll give you an example. I am a spirited person, and so I like to go around and say hi to people in their offices. I work with some very systematic people who have every 15 minutes of their day scheduled of what they're going to be doing each 15 minutes of their day. And some of them don't like when I do that. And I learned that the hard way. Like they just looked irritated. And I just thought like, oh, they must be having a bad day. No, it's because I came in and messed up their stuff. Like they had a plan and I was messing it up by just popping in and just talking about something random. And even if it was work related, I didn't schedule an appointment with them or ask them if they had the time to talk. I just went in and started talking. It wasn't a bad intention, but just not recognizing that was, while I love when people pop by my office to say hi, other people aren't like that. They like to schedule those things. So one of the things that I had to learn to do for certain people is send them an email and say, hey, I'd like to stop by today. When would be good? And that was just a little tweak that you had to do, but that's the purpose of this. Let's go to Tiffany.
All right. I am direct and spirited. They were both pretty even at 28 and 27. And this is no surprise to me at all. Considerate and systematic were pretty low, with systematic being the lowest. I am more of a vision, big picture person. The details are very hard for me. I don't like to get into the minutia of things. I like to take charge, and I'm direct and assertive. I often, the feeling side of things isn't always easy for me when we're talking about business. I tend to be more business and have trouble taking into people's feelings into consideration sometimes, as far as being considerate. I try to be considerate, but I just am more business and open and direct. I am not someone that gets hurt, my feelings hurt easily, and I'm not easily offended at all. I like to work on a lot of different projects, and I tend to be very spirited, which is an issue with being direct sometimes, because I tend to want to take on different projects and go in different directions, and then sometimes can't get it all done at once. I have the issue of seeing a squirrel, and I wish I could be like you mentioned, Nikki, where I schedule 15 minutes of my day each day, and I'm able to get that done and stay on track, but I don't. One of the challenges, or some of the challenges, I feel that I do need to listen to people's feelings a little bit better, and stay focused and direct what I'm doing, instead of being in different buckets all the time. sorry, I think that's, and patience. I need to have more patience as well. I like to get things done right away, and with government and the school board, things don't happen right away, and I struggle with that a little bit.
Thank you, Tiffany. We're the same animal. I'm direct spirit. Yes, thank you for sharing. I know, and that considerate thing, it's not, and people say, oh yeah, that makes sense, that person's not considerate. It's not that we're not considerate, it's just not our go-to to be like, how are they feeling? How is this landing on them? I love it too. My husband is also opposite of me. He's a systematic considerate. So he thinks so much about how his words are going to land on other people that sometimes the conversation passes him by. And now he's like, well, I don't want to go back a week later and say my feeling, because that seems weird, right? But yeah, it's definitely a skill to be able to simultaneously hear people or speak and be able to know how that might be landing. That's such a gift, and I wish I had more of that. I kind of say it and then afterwards go, oh, I can say it like that.
Right. I feel like you said, I don't not care about people's feelings. It's just not the go-to, and I'm open to listening to everybody's thoughts and ideas. It's just I'm not good at the pleasantries. I like the feelings and always asking how people's feelings are all the time.
Well, definitely something that being a board member and then having all these people listening to it, it's definitely something that we have to work on.
Yes, all the time.
So let's go to Michael.
All right. No, I was reflecting as I did my styles, and I think we have the long weekend, so I'm going to go back and my wife loves this kind of thing as well. So I think we're gonna do it together too, just so, because she'll want to know what I rated and then to talk about her. But I can see that there's some opposites there for sure. But so I came out the two I was tied for 25 with considerate and systematic. And so when I looked at that, for the most part, some of the personal strength, I've active listening, helping when needed, but also thinking critically and analytically, tied to that, and certainly the need for lots of organizational pieces. Some of the areas of challenge that I pulled out of that too. I think sometimes I don't always express my opinion, which is certainly an area to grow on. I think though another one of the trouble spots for me is sometimes trusting too easily, and it may be COVID enhanced, but I do. And I tell myself, no, it doesn't bother me, but I think I'm overly sensitive to, or I really have felt the criticism, kind of even what Amy has reflected on too. It's kind of like you're in a no-win situation right now, and it's been really hard. I mean, it's in all the years that I've been in education, this has been the most difficult one for sure. But I feel like as a team, we've all been in it together. And one of the things that I've enjoyed this year is just the collaborative nature of our work.
Great. Coworker, as I said, was a considerate, and she always kind of takes offense to, doesn't share her opinions. She's like, no, I'm very opinionated. I share my opinions. We were having a conversation. She said, you know what I realized is I think I am sharing my opinion, but I'm saying it in a way that's going to, be considerate. And it's not always picked up. Like people don't pick it up that was her opinion, because it's maybe not direct enough to say, like, so some people just go right past it and don't realize that she did give an opinion, you just didn't hear it. And so she said, don't people think that we're not opinionated as considerate people? We are. It's not that we don't have an opinion. It's just hard to make sure that we articulate that in a way that we're just working hard to make sure that lands the right way. And like I said with my husband, sometimes in a board meeting or in a staff meeting, it's, the moment passes and your ideas come later. That's why it's always good to think about the people on your team and give opportunities. That's why with the chat, I like the chat part, because there's people that are going to unmic and share their opinions, and then there's other people that are still thinking on it. So I love having the chat available for people to put that in after the fact when they've given it a little bit more thought. Let's go to Shauna. And that's my sister's name, by the way.
Oh, there's not very many of us.
And my last name, my maiden name was Richards. So Sherry has my last name. So anyway, not that it's not about me. It's about you, Shauna. Let's hear more about you.
Well, I'm a lot like Dawn in the fact that I'm even, kind of even, I should say. My two strongest, which is not going to be of any surprise to a lot of people, is direct was a 27 and systematic was a 26, with spirited being a 20 and considerate being a 17, which is the story of my life. I am a super task oriented. So if you give me a task, I will get it done. In my position with special ed, I have to be straightforward. So I'm able to have really difficult conversations and share difficult information, and it doesn't make me nervous. I almost feel like honored to do it because we're helping a family work through something difficult. But with being that way, I am so assertive that sometimes I run people over, and I know that. Or I'm also so assertive that sometimes people in my group don't step up and have the opportunity to grow because I'll do it, just get out of my way mentality, kind of. I'm also very impatient. So, and because of that, sometimes I don't want to follow a process because I just want to get to the end because I know what the right answer is. And then when I go back and actually follow the process, I grow more through the process than if I had just done it the way I thought it needed to be done. And then the other thing is, I think because I'm so assertive and I'm comfortable with difficult conversations, I think people sometimes have a hard time coming to me because they're nervous, because they know I'm just going to hit it head on. And so I probably inflict stress on other people that have to come to me and have difficult conversations because they just don't want to do it with me. Mm-hmm. So, and I can say being in special ed has really helped me even these things out. Because I've done a lot of things wrong in the beginning and I've had to learn to stop myself, follow the process, listen before offering fixes, just all of that stuff. And I also think as I've gotten older, the considerate has gotten less. I don't know if that's just what happens as you get older or SPED did that to me. I don't know.
Well, yeah, you would think with that because you have to like people and working. I used to work, with a lot of students that were special ed or emotional and social emotional issues. There's a lot of talking, and a lot of times they don't know what's wrong with them, so they're not very direct on it. And it's a lot of listening, so that can be pretty difficult to be a direct person and be patient enough to like listen through that, and to also let them speak before you're already solving their problems for them. That's another challenge that I know I share that as well. But I want to again thank everybody for being honest and to remember that this is not just a confessional where we dump it out here and then go, okay, I feel better because I acknowledge these things that I do or don't do. This is really the opportunity to take notes on that, to make sure that you come up with a plan on how you're going to address that. So, all of those things where we said, oh, I really don't know, on number 5, anybody that I need to work with better. Maybe at the end of this, you might go, maybe there is a way that there's some things that I can work on to work better with these types of personalities or these types of people on my team. So as we move forward, just remember to be taking notes for yourself on things that they like and appreciate and things that that maybe you could change to help you be a better team member. Let's go to Michelle.
My top one was systematic with the 26, and considerate was right behind it with the 25. With spirited being my least, but not far behind. Strengths are listening, and I put hearing what people say. I love to take into account as many sides and views before I do anything or truly make an opinion about anything. My personality is business first, social second. I can relate to a lot what Sherry said, and I agree with what Amy said. Like, I don't see that side of Sherry, but I can relate to it a lot. Another strength is that I'm super motivated. I get very excited about things. I am very competitive, very competitive. It's actually irritating, but I love challenges. So I look forward to a lot of things. Some of my greatest challenges are just human nature in general. I have a lot of fear of the unknown, so I'll stay awake thinking about all the what ifs and things out of my control. A lot of it's confidence as well for me. I will and can never feel or establish myself as the most intelligent person in the room. So I hold back on speaking up a lot. I just feel like it's rude at sometimes, or just like what people will judge me to say, being just dumb or just not necessary. Because I guess I probably do that, like, oh, why are we talking about this? So I'll judge myself on the same. But with that, about speaking up, I do feel like I have it's full of regret because although I'm not the smartest, but I feel like I have a lot of experience that I could share that could help with the topic of discussion. A challenge is also just time to dedicate. Just, you know, I want to be educated in all discussions and making really informed decisions. And the whole goal, as I love that was stated before, was to children and students are first, but it's helping the adults to do that. And that comes with education. Also, right now with teaching, I'm exhausted teaching 2 different science classes and that PLC lead. On top of that, site council, I'm spread a bit thin, so I worry right now at the start of it. Hopefully I make some changes as we move forward. I like to have quiet, focused work time, but I crave human interaction, so it's a constant balance for me to want to focus on the matter at hand, but look forward to when people do walk in the room, or I do want to go walk to other people's rooms, but I have to choose wisely at times. And I'm always concerned about, it's not necessarily people pleasing, and maybe it is, I don't know, but I'm always concerned about letting people down. That probably just encompasses all the challenges stated. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, systematic, considerate, that combination, because you want to hear everybody and you also want to think through the problem so much, it does make it difficult to kind of land on a decision and land on, you know, going forward, because you know, you do want to make sure that you didn't miss anything, right? And sometimes we don't always have the luxury of that much time, and that makes us uncomfortable sometimes with the decisions because we didn't check all of our boxes yet. And so that can be difficult to challenge, especially in something with when you're working in a team and you only get 1 of 5 votes, right? Then it's really difficult. But I appreciate you sharing all of that. And those considerate soft souls, I feel for you so much, because I'm kind of like Tiffany in that it's very hard to get my feelings hurt. And I really feel for those folks that you know, kind of really just perseverate. I mean, there are times I do perseverate on those things, but you know, I always love doing this training because it reminds me to be kind with your words, you know, because you never know the people that you're going to send.
I would give up a kidney to have a piece of Tiffany's, have a piece of that, what she has. It just,
wow, that's pretty.
But it would be nice to have, truly. I'm envious of that.
Well, the nice thing about all of these things, before I move on to Jill, is you know, they are things that you can build up and take time. And I've heard a couple people say, like, with age or with different circumstances, or, you know, with time, you can work on that. I've worked a lot on my systematic and my considerate over the years. So that, because I've been able to have people call me in and I've been able to have opportunities like this to learn, that I'm like, okay, this is something that I need to do in order to be a better leader, or to be a better team member. And so it's good to always be looking at that, because it's not going to be your natural, but it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It's just going to take a little bit more intentional effort. Jill.
So I am systematic and considerate with 31 and 29. The other 2 are very low, or lower, much lower. I'm I'm an active listener. I'm a good note taker. But like Michelle said, definitely have some of the same struggles with perfectionism. If I notice something's wrong on board docs, I definitely let them know, like, hey, I noticed this, and maybe I should not be as much like that. I'm definitely a little more sensitive, a lot more this year. Like Amy said, with social media, you read what people are saying, and definitely that can be a struggle for me. I like how our team, and I'll extend this even to the cabinet, always checks in with us because they know that we're getting a lot of the negative feedback. And they're just always, especially Sherry, I'm shocked that she's not considerate because she always asks me, how's it going? How are you feeling? So I do appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. So did I miss anybody? Like I said, I only have 4 pictures at a time, so I wasn't sure if I scrolled past. Okay. Well, we're going to move to the next page where you probably already at your team members style. And I just want to have a little bit of a conversation. First, what are we noticing? And anybody can unmute. What are some things that you noticed as we started marking down people's styles?
We have a lot of considerate people.
We have a lot of considerate people and a lot of systematic people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I don't know how your other board member, I know we have one board member that's not present, so I would love for you to offer this to her and let her go watch online if it's still up online for her to watch and see if she can gain something from that. But from what I'm seeing right now, you only have one board member that is direct and spirited. So that's going to be a little bit of a gap for you because, as we said, all of the roles are needed. So if, you have one board member, spirited people, remember, are also one that keeps the energy and keeps the ideas, generating. And if everyone else is kind of stuck in the system and they're, don't want to hurt people's feelings and they don't want to get hurt, she's going to get tired of trying to get everybody excited about, the work. And conversely, Tiffany, when you're working with a whole bunch of considerate, those things are going to feel even more so. Because what do we do when we start feeling something? We go check and verify, right? We go to our friend, we go to somebody else, like, am I wrong to think this? Right?
Exactly. Yes.
What they tell you what you want to hear, especially if they're also considerate because they see the thing the same way. So it's going to be important for people to realize that you do have a pretty big gap in terms of the natural, and remember, these are your natural personalities. Your roles are going to be a little bit different because, like I said before, when I'm in a space, consider it's also one of my lowers. I think it was like around the 17 too. But when that is missing, you will find that your other things kick up some. For example, when I'm at home, I'm my husband is systematic. That's probably his primary, with considerate secondarily, but not a really lovey-dovey, didn't come from that type of family. And so when I'm at home, I'm the one that's intuitive with everybody's feelings and ask, how that's going and stuff like that. So you can flip if it's absent. Does that make sense to some of you? Some of you I see are shaking their heads. Like when you're in certain situations, you'll notice your other skill set pop up because it's missing. And you might have already seen that on the board. Like maybe you don't consider yourself a direct person at all, but you have enough of it in you that when you see things are just spinning and nobody's going forward, you'll speak up. And so that's really important because what we're going to do in this next section is to think about just that. So just like we did 10 minutes of reflection just on our own and what we learned, we have the team reflection and action planning. So what did the team style profile reveal about your team? Do you have an even distribution of styles? We kind of already talked a little bit about that. How does your team take advantage of its style strengths? Reflect on that. I mean, one thing that I can clearly see just getting to know you all is the first thing that y'all said is we all collaborate, we all talk a lot, and that makes perfect sense given how many considerate folks you have on your team, and that's fantastic. What are some of the challenges that are created with in that dynamic? And what are some of the actions that you can do? So this is where you got to talk about yourself to help each other balance these trouble spots. What are something that you see that's maybe missing? Because that goes into the 5th one of the descriptions of the tasks and maintenance roles. What are some things that you're seeing on your team, whether it's on the board team now or on an administrative team, and then this team as a collective, that you could see yourself helping in, that you could step up and do a little bit more of, or something that you're currently doing that you feel is a really good spot for you? So just give yourself some time. Again, you may not have answers to all of these questions right now, but I want to give you about 10 minutes to jot some stuff down, and then we're going to do another quick share out before we wrap up for the day. About 5 more minutes.
Nikki, I think this was really interesting to do, coming in from January with 2 new board members, because the change of the dynamic has so changed. Before we had some, I think, that were a little more spirited in areas or direct in areas. So it's a little different to come into this, I think, being that we haven't even like fully met.
Yeah, and it is new. I mean, but it's good to do it early so you kind of know what you're, going in. But I also think it's so important because what we our kind of motto at ASBA is one new team member makes a new team, right?
100%. So I feel like this is a brand new team, and I'm like, well, we might all morph a little bit, because when I filled out, the scoring, I thought of more the old team because I don't know the new team. So I thought it was really interesting. I totally agree. Doing it early is great, but just something to think about.
You could do again. You could do it again in 2 years when maybe or maybe not you have other team members, or maybe everybody's the same, but like you said, you stepped up, or you behaved a little bit differently than you would have thought you would have in the team.
I think this really helps me, Nikki, coming in, because it's not that I as to not offend and work well and better as a team, knowing the different personalities as I come into it. It's very helpful.
Great. I'm glad that you're finding some benefit out of it. I really am. And like I said, it's simple. You're not going to get 7 paragraphs about your innermost workings like you do with some of the strength finders and the other personality types. But it's simple, and it gives you enough information to put your best foot forward in a team situation. So I have just 2 more minutes. We'll give people just a couple more minutes, and then we'll do the same thing. I'll probably only give you about a minute or so to a minute and a half to share your thoughts as a team of where, and I think we'll focus on the positive. We'll focus on where you think you would be of benefit, and where you think where you're going to focus your attention on question number 3, what ways can I improve my performance? Knowing what you know now of the team and what you know about yourself, just, I'd like to hear a little bit about what you think you can bring to the team, what roles, when you're looking at those task roles, and innovator, evaluator, energizer, where you think you might be a good fit, and then something that you personally feel like you're going to work on in order to be a better team member. So. And real quick, I'm going to go back to those task roles here. So remembering that the initiator is somebody that makes sure that they get the discussion started and help us tackle some of the more difficult issues. Coordinator, making sure that people and projects are getting done. So if there's things that the board needs to do, making sure that those things don't fall down the cracks, watching the calendar, making sure you make the most out of your agendas. Evaluator, asking questions and measuring progress. So looking at that data, following up. A lot of times, some of us, I can say from my point of view, we did it, it's done, and then forgetting to go back and look at what got done. The completer follows through with the details. Again, a lot of times that might be a little bit more difficult in the board member role because you will not be following through. So understanding kind of where that lends you in terms of your desire to do that role. Gatekeeper, getting people involved. This is a good skill for a board president to have, as is harmonizer, mediating between conflicting parties. All of these really, a good leader can come from any of these perspectives, but depending on what the current need of the board is. And then energizer, keeping spirits high and motivation high, especially something like now where people can feel pretty beat down. That might be a good skill to have on a team. And then the encourager, you know, not just focusing on what's broken or what needs to be fixed or where we need to improve, but recognizing the progress that's been made and the things that are going well. Also very important. So with that, I'm going to start at the top here, and I'm going to go with Jill. I'm going to take the timer off, give you a little over a minute just to share your thoughts now that we've gone through the team and where you think that leaves you.
Yeah, I think I could step up and be more of an initiator or a completer, both of those roles. I could do well. Like I said before, the team dynamic has changed a little. We have a new team. So I think it's going to be more feeling it out and seeing where everybody is once you get up there. Because I thought going into this 2 years ago, I would be in a much different place, more direct than I ever have been. But I've taken more of a compassionate or considerate role than I was maybe going up on the dais. So
great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shauna.
I feel our admin team right now is phenomenal, and I think we're a good group of people with a lot of really good strengths. And when we did the profile, I feel like our team is really good at taking into consideration the feelings of all of the people that we represent, and really spending a good amount of time on while we know what we need to do, how does what we need to do fit into all of the different subgroups of people that we're making decisions for, and really thinking about their thoughts and feelings. And I feel like our teachers and stuff would say that as well. As far as what I can bring to the team, I am just so grateful to be part of the team, because I think a lot of times they bring more to me than I bring to them, just on what I learn listening to the thought process and the collaboration piece. Just makes me a better leader. So I'm curious to see what everyone else says about our team, but that's kind of how I feel.
Great, thank you. Tiffany.
So being that this is a new role, I am an initiator and a coordinator by trait, but I think at the beginning, I would like to be more of an evaluator and ask questions and listen, because I am new to this, and I also don't like to overstep my boundaries either. So I am not good at a completer, so I would defer to another team member to be better at the completer. But as you mentioned, we aren't the ones that are in the details as much on the board as well.
Great, thank you.
Sorry, my husband's making noise.
Oh, it's fine. I was glad I was on mute. My dogs got all excited when my family got home. So let's go with Dawn.
There we go. Boy, I have to echo what Shauna said. I loved hearing everyone's perspective here. And when I think about the district admin team, I look at us, so we're a very little balanced group. And then I look at hearing with our amazing governing board, our extended, community district leadership team. I look at such potential and opportunities we have together through this. And I think I like something that you said about that as we continue, the more we know about each other and situations to present themselves, that other traits may begin to, that may not have been our dominant, but that we sort of step up to fill that need, because I think awareness of it allows us to be real thoughtful in what we do and how we do it together. And going back to our priority, I mean, we as a team need to make sure that we do what we do for students, because we support the adults and system that allow us to make sure that happens. And a functional team, a balanced team that supports each other is how we do that. And I tell you, I could not be more proud of our team and how we've come together through some really difficult things. And I think the difficult things in some instances of how we've even helped grow each other through this. And so I really appreciate this opportunity to kind of really truly hear where people are. Personally, I think continuing to be that coordinator, that gatekeeper and harmonizer to help organize where we are and how we move forward together on both sides of our strengths and our needs, because our community will be very direct and spirited with us too on needs as we continue to navigate this together.
Thank you, Dawn. Michael.
So I think just reflecting a little bit, one of the things that they always say is the first step towards recovery is identifying the problem. And I think for us, I think just reframing and looking at the roles and the tasks from this perspective is probably really beneficial, not just for internal reflection, but then also, working with and understanding your team members. And certainly there's not been a better environment than the one that we're in right now to really kind of test those relationships and those roles. And so I just see this feedback enhancing what we're able to do, and just even to be able to do it better. So for my personal tasks, just looking at the roles that are kind of naturally my roles, and certainly do those well, which is probably more coordinator, completer, but then just challenged to look within our team and see where there's needs, and if an initiator or energizer or encourager is needed, then to kind of stretch myself and maybe go a little bit outside my comfort zone and just help what's needed, maybe be a little bit more situational depending on what the need is for the team. But I do echo what other team members have said, and it's a great team to work with.
Great, thank you. Michelle?
Looking at the profile, looks like we're pretty evenly distributed for considerate and systematic for the top totals. I guess I go forward to hereby nominate David as the director of energizing and team director of enthusiasm, because he's over there. Which is good, but which comes down to the bottom, what challenges will that create is one or two people can't carry the team. David can't always rally. And Tiffany and Shauna should not always be the ones to ask the tough questions and raise the difficult topics at hand. And then possibly do all the work. So it's just some things to think about as we all kind of get ourselves in some tough times, and we're going to get tired and worn out, just to make sure we're not abusing these areas that only a couple people fall in. And as far as the strengths goes for that, we have a lot of people that are focused on getting the job done. That's in those couple of shapes, as you will. And then I guess what actions can you take to help each other balance these trouble spots? Let's just stay focused on the topics at hand. Let's focus on why we're here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. David. Oops.
I think one thing that I've appreciated looking at these different, how people have responded and stuff, is the fact that I think that we're genuine people. And I think that's really important as we move forward. And it's okay for us to be in a certain spirited or considerate, right? It's okay. That's where we're at. As long as we're genuine, I think, to what we do and how we react to people, and that it's okay. I think as we look through some of the situations we're dealing with, especially with the conflict, that it's all right for us to go back to our strengths. And I think sometimes, and as I reflect on it, as I wish I were more organized, or I wished I were more direct in certain situations, to come back and think, but I need to play onto my strengths to be able to help the team, and how we can coordinate together. It's interesting to me, some of the reflection, I think, and some of the tasks when we look at what our role is, in terms of being the initiator, perhaps, and Don's put in that situation so much more as the boss, right? But how we can respond and support to her, I am grateful the fact that I believe that we are here to support each other, and I hear about other teams and other situations where the individual is more important than the team. And I hope that for us, that we never get to that point where it's more about what we feel and what we're doing, as opposed to what the team is doing as a collective. And I think that that's something we have to focus on and continue to work with. How do we make sure that we're working as this team and as this group together? And it's not about, honestly, it's not about the board getting glory or the superintendent getting glory or the opposite, the superintendent getting killed or the board getting killed. It's about us presenting this fact that we are going to work together and we are diverse. And now we know a little bit more about how diverse we are, right? But that can we continue to support each other within our roles to make sure we do the best thing for our kiddos.
Thank you, David. And I just, before I go to Mom and Amy, I've also heard, and this is not part of their official curriculum, but in the different strength finders and true colors and all those other ones that we've done, the idea, and maybe this is just my thinking, but sometimes I feel like in times of high stress, we will revert to our least likely ones. I don't know if that makes sense for anybody else, but I'll give you an example. With me being spirited and direct, when I'm really upset or if I'm really stressed, I will become very quiet and very sensitive and very much want to control things, want to like come up with a plan. All right, now we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So sometimes we do the opposite, right? When we're pushed to a point. So that's something to consider too. When you flip it, like how am I when I'm under stress? Am I still super considerate or do I become very direct? And so just some food for thought. All right, I'm going to let Amy close us out. So let me go to Mom.
I think I just have to echo what many of you said. I like what you've said, David, in regards to the fact that, we are a team and thinking about everybody, and going back to what many of you said from the very beginning, we're all here and we're all in education because of students. And whether it's helping them directly or indirectly through our employees, through our community, or through working with them on projects, or them having a voice in other areas, where, going back to assume positive intent. We're all here because we want to be here for the success of our students and how that plays within our community in the bigger picture. And we all have different roles in which we present and view that, but making sure that we're listening to one another and staying on track for our end goal in the bigger picture. So, I think everyone's kind of said different things that I think is helpful. I don't have to go into more detail with that, but just always remembering that we're all here for good reasons and why we got involved, whether it's volunteering on the board and running and taking the time of your schedule, or it's us as administration and making sure that we make the right decisions and choices and listening to everybody and doing the best we can, because we always just try to make the best decisions that we can in the moment with the information that we have, knowing that there are polar opposites and everything in between, but what's best for all in the bigger picture.
Great. Thank you, Mom. All right, Jill, you want to round us out?
Amy,
I'm sorry, Amy.
It's okay. I just want to say, and many of my team members know, 2019 was a terrible year for me on an emotional side, because I lost my mom to Alzheimer's, and it was like the worst year. And then 2020 said, here, hold my beer, because in education and as a school board president, it has by far been the hardest year emotionally of my life. And I can't imagine doing it with anybody else than who's on this team. So I just want to say, Dr. Foley has been such a spearhead in our team, and she's in the detail, she's in the processes and the procedures, and that has been something we are so thankful for. And Mom in HR, just handling all those stories. There's just so many this whole year of COVID. She's just handled it with such grace and kindness. And I've seen Sherry and David work together. They are a fun team. Sherry, I just think you are so kind and compassionate. I don't know if you see that in yourself, but and David, the life of the party. We appreciate that. We need that. I hope I can do more of that, because that's not my go-to. I would say I'm more of an encourager, like Jill, And I look forward to getting to know Tiffany and Michelle better and see how they play out on our board. But I think this is the greatest team that we've had in Higley that I've seen in many, many years. And so I am just really grateful to get to know you all better today.
Oh, well, that was a nice thing to end on then. So again,
and like David said, I think the genuine of these people, it's apparent. It shows. So thank you.
well, I am glad to have been here to work with this team that so very much wants to do what's best for their community and is working really hard to be good team members to each other. So I applaud you with the roles and responsibilities and the 8 characteristics. I know you're working at those as well. So I would encourage you to continue to do that, continue to focus on your development, which you've already shown a commitment to. In terms of this workbook, I do want to remind you, bring it out in 6 months, maybe even schedule a study session check-in to say, hey, how do we feel about this? Anybody want to, talk about how they've changed or grown or things that they're feeling? I mean, it might be a good opportunity to do that. I'd be welcome to facilitate that. Or I'd love to.
Nikki, are you doing our training on the 30th, or is that Julie?
I think that might be Julie.
Okay.
Communication protocols.
Yes. Okay.
So, but
it'll be fun to see her though after spending the morning with you. So
yes. Well, I will say that you get the whole package. We really are the yin and yang. We have different strengths, and I think it's been really a pleasure to work with her. And I love when our teams are just get a chance to work with both of us because we do bring different things. So, with that, I just want to thank you for your time. We are going to be done
for your time
early, so that's nice. About a half hour early. I will be following this up with an email with a survey if you all would be so kind as to complete that. And I will, unless there's any questions, I will turn it back over to you to.
I think I left somebody out. Mike, Dr. Fowler, I've seen you grow so much this past year in your role because he's had a tough year. And I think him and I can commiserate together a lot on just the COVID. So I didn't mean to leave you out there, Dr. Fowler. Okay, any other questions or comments from anybody? I'll open it up for just a moment.
Just a big thank you for everybody in your time this morning. Nikki, this was such a fabulous way for us to start as a new team. Thank you for this. And to our governing board, we are so grateful and appreciative of you and all that you do. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Just thanks again to our board. I mean, it's so great to work with a supportive board. I've been in places where that hasn't always been the case, and so thank you, because especially this year, I know that it seems like it doesn't matter what you do and you're going to be criticized, but we really appreciate your support. It goes a long way.
Yes, it does.
Thank you, Dr. Fowler, and Shauna too in our special ed department. Just navigating special ed in a pandemic has been nothing but difficult. So I really appreciate all the hard work. I've seen it firsthand. Okay, with that, board members, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carries 4-0. Have a wonderful Saturday, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, you too. Thank you.
Enjoy the long weekend.
Yes, Monday's off. Enjoy. You all deserve it.